to me.
He's talking.
Okay. And then you are speaking, let him speak.
Come on. We're together. We came together to speak.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me give you one verse before you speak. Now, we Muslims believe in our Quran. Madam, we Muslims believe in our Quran from the beginning to the end. Madam, can I ask you, do you...
AD 900, whenever it was, after the Bible was written. So come on.
Madam, please allow me to
Carry on.
allow me to
Carry on. You're jumping all over. You're jumping all over the place.
Okay, I'm not jumping. I'm standing there. Am I jumping? All of... No!
Okay, yeah, you are jumping. Every time again, you want to move away, you want to take the time, you don't want to listen.
No, you should learn your English properly. I'm standing still, not jumping. Maybe I'm moving.
Don't try and be insulting or funny.
Anyway, I'm not insulting you. Let me tell you, madam, okay, I'm speaking to him. All right. Sir, in each and every Christian Bible, let me read these words, then I'll come back to you. Okay, sir, in each and every Christian Bible, in the New Testament, in the first book of Timothy, chapter 2, verse 11, the Bible says, a woman, every Bible says, a woman should learn in quietness and full submission. Then verse 12 it says in the Bible, I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man. The Bible says...
My question is, what's your opinion about it? For example,
I'm a Western heritage. You're Eastern heritage. You are. We make peace with you, Christians. We make love. I understand peace. Israeli Jews understand peace.
Did you hear what he said?
You guys understand peace.
What he said? He's a European.
Anyway, I remember the rising sun has dawned upon us today.
Come back. Chapter 17, verse 74 of the Quran. About Muslims abandoning God and Allah has abandoned them. That's why they're all killing each other. Sunnis killing Shia, Shia killing Sunnis. In the Quran it says, do not set up sects of Islam. What have they done? Set up sects of Islam, and now they're killing each other.
set up.
Just like the Jews. Just like the Muslims.
We're not
And now they're killing each other.
But the majority
What happened inside the cave?
Wow, they fell. Jesus. Many men.
Explain your own book. Explain it. Explain your own book. Inside the cave, your foundation of what Islam stands on. I'll tell you something, right?
Which one is Islam?
You see that building over there, right? You see that?
Let me give you this. No, don't touch me, please. This brother, yeah? This brother here, I was chatting to a brother, and his name was Saleh, yeah? I'm going to turn the face to me in 1 second, and then you're going to walk away from this brother. Trust me. See this brother,
so he's
see
dragging
this
him
guy,
away.
see this
Sorry,
man
he's
here.
dragging
This
you
man
away.
here, yeah. He's heckling.
He's dragging you away.
He's chatting sheesh. He's chatting
He's
what?
dragging
You
you
don't
away.
need Abrahamic meat. You don't need Deuteronomy if you want to. If I make accusation, you can rebut it. Yeah? Let me tell you something. I said, this guy, I'm chatting to some guy out of town. He says his name is Saleh.
Yeah, inside the Quran.
I'm not stopping anyone from talking, even though I'm coming to
He says there is.
we don't need to explain our book. Here's the book. Explain it for yourself. It will either testify or it will either collude with us in our assistance of getting to Jannah al-Firdaus and Allah on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah.
We're talking about inside the cave. And who was talking?
So what we're saying is, I said to this brother, his name is Saleh. I said, oh, Saleh's the name of a prophet. This guy says, oh, am I saying he's a prophet? When someone tried to bust joke like that as a stranger, you know when you look at someone funny up and down when they're standing at the bus stop and they try to bust something,
who was talking?
Is this bird looking for little backhands?
Yeah, who was saying that?
Or a knee? Or a boot?
Go on, read it.
That's the kind of attitude man come with. That's the kind of attitude man will get. You want someone to explain a book to you? Go look up exegesis. Tell them that. E-X-E-G-I-S-I-S. You shh. This is Speaker's Corner. You want to listen? I'm on Vita and a warner. Not just dawa, but warning, blood. Go and keep brainstorming.
You're disrespecting your own book.
No one.
You're disrespecting the reading of your book
too. Build one, fam.
Have some
Like
respect for
Beavis
your own
done,
book.
build one, damn. We like comedy.
Have some respect for your own book.
We do comedy, bro. We do two-way. You got two ears, one for that, one for this.
Have some respect
One
for your
for that,
own
one
book.
for this. One for that, one for this. But you don't know about heaven being bliss, so do ya? But you want to tell a brother read a verse and then screw ya? Like, oh, you never see a man look up another man like boo ya? Like, this is my crew, ha? Like, woo ha? Got Buster. But you trying to cuss the man them? Cuss the book all you like. Cause you worship Aphrodite and night and the sun. Did I forget the sun and Venus? You worship a man who has one of these called a. Can anyone finish the sentence? No, exactly.
It's Ramadan, man.
Astaghfirullah, that's why we say it. Joseph,
Is this your
put up chapter 12 of the Quran.
Is this your Ramadan?
Joseph, Tim Curry, Technicolor Dream Code.
Is this also your Ramadan?
Yes, it is. Alhamdulillah. We cults like Dulux.
Muslim Ramadan. Look how they're
Everybody get Dulux.
No, I'm not. Come on now. I'm painting from what I see. I'm painting from what I see.
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Hands out the pockets to salute the Queen. We rhyme on Speaker's Corner. Hassan Jibreel, Hassan ibn Thabit. Hassan ibn Thabit. Hassan Jibreel.
One time you tell him truth, he says no.
You don't even know about the Injil. That's the gospel. Read in Arabic, it says Allah. Gospel of John in Arabic says Allah.
If you hurt somebody, I would have to then get a go. When he's talking and he's sinning.
But this must be a month of Ramadan. Why did they even
Ramadan is a scorching month, so we burn fire. You know Mary White House experience? Scorchio.
But listen to me.
What you desire?
Sign up for a gym, man. Find something.
And you're not a smile.
You're 46.
Like, ooh, smile.
You can't come out of your house just trying to. You know what I mean? You can't just
say,
come out
who's got the keys to my jeep?
come out of your house trying to look at
Weak.
you know, for Muslims and that. You know what I mean?
Soften up the heart.
Have a better purpose in life.
Enough for coming in the corner and say, Ross, Clark.
But I was just having a conversation and he interrupted. So why are you blaming me? You're having a go at me. You're supposed to be having a go at him.
I'm not having a go with you.
You're supposed to be speaking to him, not me.
Advice. That's what I'm trying to
Who to me?
Well, you know the less you know.
He's trying to give me advice. He's trying to give me. Listen. What's funny about that? What is wrong with you? Advise him.
You asked the question and you got to ask.
I'm asking a question. He's supposed to be reading something, right? Are you supposed to be reading something from the Quran, right? This guy.
I got a question. I got a question.
And now he's advising.
Grow up! Not grow up.
I don't
grow
have
up.
to reason.
Not grow up.
Are you
Because you got
reasonable,
dim hair and you got light hair.
And you think he's right? He's advising me rather than
So
advising
you have
me.
the left side, you have the right chair.
Let's have a
So
real
we sit on the
discussion,
right side of the
man.
Creator.
Let's have a real discussion. I got a question for you.
That's a man like the Messiah, but not King David. David was forgotten. That didn't mean he come out.
Listen, they must end this because it's just.
Man like Prophet Evil.
It's too many evil spirits around here, man.
There's no evil spirits, man.
No, you don't know the definition for spirits, bro. Don't matter.
Yeah, you are right, though.
Gonna get something like.
I'll see you later, mate. I'm telling you, man, do your homework, man. Find something better to do, man. It's great to have a conversation with people, not arguing and looking for everyone's faults and stuff. You know what I mean? You're not here, obviously, for the right reasons, are you?
But all European.
I just wanted to give you that advice, literally. That.
Boss, listen.
You can go to gym, man.
You
Use
need
that energy for something
to
else.
be sensible and grown up, okay?
I think I am. Funny enough, the young.
And you're advising me
Yeah,
after behaving like that.
After behaving like what?
I know this brother's smiling.
No, I'm saying to
I condemn the guy that was shouting
behaving
at
like that, right?
I condemned the guy that was shouting at you. And the minute I
What
told
did you
him,
say? I asked you. You gave me a lecture. He tried to give me a lecture, right? And he said,
But you're not really going anywhere. There's no substance to your words. You're just laughing.
You have to be
It doesn't
tolerable.
make it.
You be,
I think.
He's younger than
It just
you,
sounds
just be
stupid.
tolerable.
Just laughing for no
Tolerance.
reason.
Jesus practiced tolerance.
Listen to me. You've got the moral aspects wrong, right? Morality says, right, go and speak to the one who's causing the trouble. If I'm trying to keep the peace, right, by carrying on that conversation with someone, suddenly this guy comes in and behaves like a, I don't want to use the word, right? Listen, therefore, now you're coming to me to advise me when I'm trying to have a peaceful conversation.
Yeah.
You're coming to advise me about me doing what?
Yeah.
Me doing what?
Having something better to do with your life than looking for faults of other people's religions. Simple as that. You ask the question and you answer the question.
It's relating to him.
So he finds your moral conduct indecent because what you're doing is you're demonizing our religion.
I'm not knowledgeable, man. That's the thing. I understand the.
But here's the thing, doesn't he have a
So
reason?
that's an
Because
accusation against you from one. I don't know who else made
He's asking a question.
No, so you know you're complaining about us demonizing Islam, but if the
No one can demonize.
no, but if all right, here's the thing. Right, but here's the thing.
never happen.
If some problem happened over here, and some kind of disaster, and then the Muslims decided to try and counter it, they'd form the caliphate.
What?
Now, if the caliphate
Over here.
That's a big
he can form in any country. No, but he can form in any country.
We live in a democracy here. I don't think that's
No, but the caliphate can form in any country.
And at the end of the
You
day,
gotta take the queen out, man. You got a
Right,
military.
but if it happens,
Say you cuckoo lad.
you guys say absurd.
yeah, but here's my question.
I can't entertain it.
No, but here's my question.
I apologize if I'm giving
those
advice
ifs.
that probably
If that
no, that's
happens,
fine.
a pig can fly over the moon.
do
Or is
something
it a
better
cow
with
can
your
fly over the
life,
moon?
coming here with cameras and stuff. You know you're growing. You know what I mean?
You're going off topic.
No,
We live in
You're going off topic.
Britain.
I'm just being
It's
honest.
a democratic state. We have a military. We have police. The structures, the organisation place.
Was Iraq
This ain't Iraq.
Was Iraq democratic?
This is where democracy started.
Yeah, but Iraq did they have?
This is where it started.
Right, but did
Industrial-
Iraq have like a
That can't
ruler?
happen here.
Right.
It
So
can't
what
happen
happened in
here.
Iraq can't happen here.
Impossible.
You sure?
The British state is too strong. Impossible.
Right. And what did Syria get invaded?
Syria has
Yeah.
This country, number one, this country is surrounded by water, so it's easy to secure. Number two, the intelligence it's too complicated. You need to go into politics, military. It's impossible. Even if someone tried to organize a coup here, it won't happen here.
Okay.
It could happen in a foreign country, but it can't happen here.
Okay, let's just get back to what happened there. Tell me, what's your understanding of what went
I
on
don't
there?
know what happened. One guy was
Oh,
rapping.
so you don't know?
One
But
guy was rapping.
you
You
find it
got
cool to have a go at me?
No, one guy was
You find
rapping.
it cool to have a go at me?
He was rapping. You didn't like him rapping, and the other guy was
So
had some grievances.
that's all you thought it was? It's just
That's
rapping?
what I saw.
And that's all you could perceive
I could
that was
see a
going
guy
on?
rapping.
That's all you can perceive what was going on?
I can't perceive anything else, can I? What else was
No.
it? Unless if you want to interpret something else.
But anyway, the question I was going to ask you. So, if the caliphate came over here,
can't though, it's impossible.
but let me just ask the question
How,
anyway.
though? I'm going to ask you how. How?
Because there's loads of Muslims.
It's a hypothetical situation.
There's enough
Let's not
Muslims.
talk about hypotheticals.
No, but there's
Well,
still
you
enough.
can't talk about it, but he can.
There's still enough for a
You've got a
caliphate.
vote, it's a democracy. So unless, if there's a vote, but even then it's impossible because you're living in a democracy.
Right. So Muhammad was a democracy.
No. You're conflating two issues. Yeah.
Like what?
What context are you coming? Are you democratic? What? You need to come with a context. You can't just mix things here and there.
Yeah, but you have
Peace
to
be upon him. He was a prophet, like many other prophets, like Jesus, like Moses. Right? He was sent to a geographical location, to a certain people, with a certain message. So where are you going with that? I don't understand.
All right, but
Where are you going with that?
no, what I was trying to say
Here's
about this.
democracy.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say about the caliphate
Britain,
is.
in the 19th century.
Just listen to him, let him finish. You just talk.
It's
Let's let him
just a
finish.
simple question. So, if the caliphate was to come here, who would be able to? No. Let me just ask. Just finish. Who would be able to would the moderate Muslims be able to stop them? What would they use? Would they be able to use the Quran just answer me. Would the moderate Muslims be able to use the Quran to stop the caliphate?
That's like saying a shoe's gonna grow out your head. That's how impossible it is. There's no caliphate coming here. There never has. There never will be. You can die. Another 1,000 years will go by.
Right.
The geography and the politics of this country, there'll be no caliphate.
But if there's no caliphate, then why are Muslims staying here? Shouldn't they want to go where the caliphate?
No, because democratically you can stay here.
Yeah, but shouldn't Muslims want to go where there is a caliphate?
There is no caliphate.
No, shouldn't Muslims? Huh?
I'm here the same reason why you're here.
1924.
Yeah, I know, but your forefathers.
Yeah,
it's abolished then.
But we don't have an order.
Your forefathers weren't here. They were like my forefathers. They were relaxed where they were.
Yeah, but we don't.
Somebody came and colonized them.
I know, but we don't have a fighting order from our religious leader. We don't have an order to fight.
Neither do we.
So Muslims don't. So what? Umar.
Say that again.
So Umar, what he did was wrong.
What did he do?
After the real prophet died, when Umar went to Jerusalem, that was wrong.
That wasn't wrong. The Christians gave him the key.
Huh?
The Christians told them that they were being oppressed. There's two ways you can interpret something. You can say it's a Russian invasion, or you can say it's Russian liberation of Ukraine. Which one? What? Do you understand?
So they came.
If there's an enemy in your house and you're inviting somebody to come inside, and he can say, "Well, I've invaded your house." It depends which way you want to interpret it.
But have you heard
which narrative? You want to go with this narrative? Which narrative?
So
you want to go with the hostile narrative?
No, so you haven't heard of the Pact of Umar?
I've read the history.
And so that's all peaceful.
It was a war of self-defense, but it's arguable. You can argue it's an invasion.
So they wanted the Muslims to come so that you couldn't have bells in their churches anymore. That's the reason why.
Because you had a Byzantium Empire that had many fractions. I don't want to get into the politics of it, but they weren't happy with the Byzantium rule within Jerusalem. They wanted liberation, so they asked Umar to come. He came with a donkey with his servant, and he said to the servant, you go on the donkey. And when they came, they thought the servant was Umar, and he was pulling the donkey. And then the Christians, the priest, he gave him the keys to the city. There was no conquest. There's no what you're talking about. And he said to him, come to the church and pray. And he said, I'm not going to pray in the church because I fear that those that come after me will turn the church into a mosque. So he prayed outside.
He prayed as a Muslim or Christian?
As a Muslim.
Alright, so you haven't heard about the history which suggests he was a Christian?
No, there is bad history within us, I'm not denying it.
Yeah.
There's history in Christianity. People do a lot of wrong things. Unless if you're a prophet, you don't make mistakes. Yeah, we do have some. I'm not saying our history is brilliant. There is colonization.
Yeah.
We do have a colonial aspect to our Islamic rule. I'm not denying that or denounce it. Right. Within the Ottoman period, there was a lot of injustice going on, but that was going on even within amongst ourselves. The Sunnis, the Shias, the sectarian. But you have to look at things geopolitically in that context, not in the world we live in today.
So you prefer like how it is here, where the heathens get to rule and there's no caliphate.
No, I don't prefer. I prefer religion and state shouldn't be separated.
Can you ride it good?
So you prefer a caliphate?
I prefer that human beings were all guided by prophets, whether they're Chinese or wherever you come from.
Yeah.
The Quran says there was 124,000 prophets in the world.
Do you actually believe that?
Yeah. Every nation had a prophet and a warner. And mankind, as a human being...
Is there any proof of that?
As mankind, we always search for the divine meaning. We always hear that there's a greater purpose. And here they said religion and state should be separated. But I think there should be a multiplicity.
No, you're talking over here.
Wherever in the world, you should divide, you should rule by what God has given, whether it's the Vedas by the Hindus, whether it's the Bible by the Christians or the Jews or the Muslims
or the Caliphate.
That can all come under a caliphate. If you could have a Christian caliphate, you could have a Jewish caliphate, you could have a Hindu caliphate, if that's what you want to call it. Yeah. Caliphate is not exclusive to just Muslims. Caliphate existed at Solomon At the time of Israel, that was a caliphate.
Yeah. So if there was a caliphate,
David,
right? But if
that was a caliphate.
Yeah. If there was a caliphate,
Holy Israel was a caliphate.
Yeah, no, and it enforced
And what
Surah.
Israel's trying to build now is a caliphate.
Yes, and it tried to enforce Surah 534, I think it is. Would you agree with that?
You can't enforce anything without the consent of the governed.
No, but from the Quran, I mean. That's from Allah.
But even in Quran, you need the consent of the governed.
What? For what Allah says?
You need consent of the governed. You can't force
of the caliphate if there was one.
anything. In the Quran, it's quite clear. La ikrah fi din. There's no compulsion in religion. You can't force.
Well, I won't agree with that.
A political rule on somebody that doesn't accept it. You know the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he came to Mecca, they rejected him, and then when he went to Medina, they accepted him. And in Medina,
and what happened to him after? He destroyed all of them.
No. In Medina, he actually
that's not very good, is it?
A political equality. In Medina,
You know,
there was Hindus.
Someone welcomed you into their land, right?
Christians.
Peaceful, welcome into the land,
Yeah.
and then he turned on
He
them,
was the
and then he
first-
killed them all off.
If you're talking about democracy,
What is that?
It was called the Mishkat of Medina. It's called the Constitution of Medina. The political quality of Medina.
And don't say that they didn't sign any treaties, because no treaties were
Where
signed.
he-
There's only
where
about
he
2 or 3 people signed
Let me
treaties
finish.
out of the whole tribe.
Where he ruled, he got different tribes, so it was a democracy. You know how he ruled?
Who? Muhammad?
I told you, peace be upon him. You know how he ruled? He didn't do one vote, one person. He went to tribes. The tribes were warring. So you had Jews, Christians, and pagan Arabs who were warring with each other, and internally they were warring. So he went to the tribal heads to form a coalition. He went to one. You're the head of your tribe, let's say your Jewish tribe, spoke to you, spoke to them individually, and came to a constitutional agreement. And they all accepted him. And he ruled on the base of religious equality, not religious discrimination. And you know what religious equality means?
You see, the
You know
signing
the
of this
market,
treaty,
a
right?
free
We're
and a
talking
fair
about the
market.
treaty that was signed.
One second, a free and a fair market.
You see,
So
the treaty wasn't signed.
It was signed. In Medina, you know the market, there was no
I'll go into
sanctions.
that.
You know right now, Britain's imposed sanctions. The Prophet never imposed sanctions.
Okay,
He
but-
said the market was free.
but
A Hindu, a Christian, a Jew can come in the market and he can have equal status as a Muslim. Just
Yeah,
because you're Muslim, you don't have any higher status in the market. A free and a fair market. He destroyed interest, riba, which is the greatest oppression of mankind. Slavery. That's why you have to work. Because of interest. We're all slaves to the financial IMF. He destroyed all of that.
Yeah, so that's why you need the caliphate.
Do you understand? And that's why
you
they
guys.
accepted his rule. You know, Islam is beautiful. You know, in the Quran, it actually calls for multiplicity of caliphates. So he acknowledges that there's going to be a Jewish caliphate, there'll be a Christian caliphate, there'll be a Chinese caliphate.
Do you know what that is?
Yeah. Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 48. God said He created you in tribes and multiplicity is nations. Yeah? Not as one. Each was given away. Alright, come on, let's go. I have to go now. I've got to leave. That's one day when Jesus comes. When Jesus comes, he'll sort out the mess.
You'll be surprised. Accept him before you die. Just remember. No, you've accepted Isa. No.
That's the sad thing about it, is that the caliphate is supposed to be something that they should actually want, because then that's when Sharia can be enforced. But no, it's supposed to say they don't want it.
Yeah, the thing is, right, the caliphate was abolished, right? It was defeated in 1924, right? Right? So therefore, now what's going on? Right?
1917.
Yeah, but the latest one was 1924.
Right.
Roughly. I'm correct. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
You know, this jihad and all that kind of offensive jihad, right? Can only operate under the sort of leadership and guidance and authorization of the caliphate. Offensive jihad. Yeah? Now, they can't. You know, when the ISIS was going around, right, they were trying to form that caliphate. That's why they could go around killing and sleeping with the women and doing all that stuff, right? They're trying to make it bigger and bigger. It started, and they wanted to make it bigger and bigger. So they want to do what they want to do, right? So therefore, it got crushed, right? And to me, it's still going on, bits and pieces, right?
No, but it should do, because remember, it's in the hadith, and since such a large amount of their hadiths about jihad, this was fine. Now,
this was fine from day one to the end, right? That's what's supposed to happen. But when it goes into a different section now, where they're trying to say, oh because they haven't, because this caliph, right? They can only go on the advance unless it says comes from the leader of the caliph.
Yeah, the caliph. Right? Yeah.
But at the moment, right, it's still going on, the offensive. Yeah, because it's called defensive.
Well,
it's called defensive jihad right now.
Yeah.
Because how they class the defensive jihad is because they see situations where, look what you've done to us, we're just defending ourselves.
Yeah.
They put a label on you, yeah? Although there's no advanced jihad, it's still jihad, but like you said, it still goes on from then until then, right? It still go on because they haven't got the official caliph head. But the defense is going on still from beginning to the end, right?
Yeah.
And the way they look at the actual defense is that they put a label on you saying that, look what you've done to us, so we're defending ourselves. But still an operation of.
But you know where they get that from? Because I was speaking to Abbas, and he actually mentions that he was given an excuse for why Muhammad could raid the caravans. Right. So what he was saying is that it's because of what the Quraysh did to him in Mecca. So Abbas actually justifies that if they do something to you, you then raid them after.
Exactly what he said to you.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And so like I said when I speak to Abbas, that shows you that some Muslims
But jihad never stops.
No.
It never stops. The only thing that makes it more seen and prevalent is if they actually control a vast area.
Yeah.
Where then we can give a label then saying caliphate. Yeah? At the moment they're only small little pockets. That's why we're on the defensive. Yeah? So we're getting larger and larger. Don't worry, we're on the defense. We're getting larger and larger. Yeah?
But anyway, remember what happened? Remember they sent the drones that blew up the previous leader? So now they're using that as a reason to attack. Because they blew up one of their guys. So they got a reason.
That's what, and the reason is I said they're on the defense.
Yeah.
See? So, I trust you. Getting back to the scenario that happened there. How can they justify what that guy and what went on? How could they do that? That guy was supposed to read out that Muhammad's inside the cave. And then that other guy comes up and starts behaving the way he's doing. And then they accuse me of something. I'm trying to listen to.
Yeah, no, that's simple. You've seen the videos of where you see those ISIS guys beheading the Christians. It's just the same. He's got the same attitude as those guys. I think they call it flow. He's got the same attitude as those guys beheading. So yes,
one just left. I'm not beyond him. He seems reasonable, but there's a side to it.
I'm talking about what I think. Anyway, it's strange. He seems to have something in it. Some of the other activities. It's a child that's strange. When
you think about it, a lot of Moses and going up the mountain.
You know what? Earlier on, I was speaking to them, one of them leading up to this, right? You know, I've said to them, right? Your God says that in their book is that they say that their God is not a spirit, right? The Quran, right? Their Allah is not a spirit. I'm saying, well, if he's not a spirit, he's got to be physical then, yeah? And they say, well, he's not physical. But in your book, they say he's got arms, he's got legs, he's got all sorts of other parts. So therefore, why is that? I don't know what they're going to say, that's just an analogy. But how can you make an analogy? You can't make nothing like your God.
What they say is that he's got, what some of the schools say is that he's got parts, but not as how humans think of it. That's what they say.
But that means that the words that they put down in the Quran doesn't make sense to them. If that doesn't relate to their God, if that doesn't relate to their God, put anything down.
Yeah, because what they're saying, the Quran doesn't actually actually explain. So their explanation is beyond the Quran. So Allah himself essentially explains.
Yeah, that he's got body parts.
Yes, Allah's just left it to his mother. But from what I can see, I think Muhammad just thought he was just like a physical being. When you look at when Muhammad talks,
and it was probably because he felt so physically tired to exert himself. So when he finally sat down,
Muhammad is saying that he's placing a veil on it.
You can see it.
Just being a being. That's how Muhammad is. Yeah. But because of the Christians, that's why it's
so unusual to see a bird on a mountain street as well. Because there's not many
No, but they do fly.
Or was it like
at the same time? At the same time, he's not. And I said to him, well, explain. And I said to him, I said to him, well, explain what spirit is. They can't explain what spirit is because God's not a spirit. And I was trying to say to him, well, okay.
Well, wait. Yeah, but Jibril's a spirit. Jibril's supposed to be a spirit. So if Jibril's a spirit, Allah isn't.
Yeah, strange, yeah. And they can't explain on what spirit is. I mean, I was trying to sort of like define the spirit. See if you can figure out with me where I'm going wrong, right? Defining the spirit. I was just looking into the Bible and whatever, right? But I'm saying the spirit is, you cannot see. Right? You cannot see a spirit. You cannot feel a spirit, touch, smell, anything like that of the spirit.
Yeah.
Right? But can your senses, I didn't know, can your senses sense the spirit?
No,
nothing.
You've only got five senses.
Right. So any one of your senses
yes, the five. None of the five.
detects a
None
spirit.
of the five can detect a spirit.
None of them. No, exactly. That's not true. So you can't. Right. So therefore, they said that what they say, their God is not a spirit. You can't. And he read out something saying that you can't understand Allah. He's unknowing and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is general. Anyone can say that's within our book. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think the problem they have is that the term spirit is not a specific term, it's actually an exclusive term. What spirit is just something which isn't natural.
Yeah, that's what I said to him.
But is an actual, let's say it's a person, but it's not natural, then that would be a spirit. So it's an exclusive term. So for them to say it's not a spirit, then you've got a problem because that means we can't use a term to describe what Allah is then because those are the only two terms we use there's a food here, a food there, it's the opposite of spirit.
It's just physical. The opposite is just physical. Just totally opposite. I mean, the spirit is more real than what the physical is. Because the physical came out of the spirit. Before the physical, there was only spirit. God. It tells you in, was it John 4:24? God is spirit, and they that worship him are worship him in spirit and in truth. God is a spirit.
So when it says
therefore,
what I'm trying to say is when it uses that term, God is a spirit, it's not trying to describe him. It's just saying that he's not physical.
He's not physical.
That's what it means.
It's not physical. If you're not physical, you can't see him. You cannot everything. And I said, is that your God? And they said no.
But that's the thing, so I don't really understand.
They said the God is not spirit. So what is it? I said to explain what he is then. Oh, he's not. He's unknowing. Is this? But they're explaining nothing. That's why I try and tease them because because they get upset. Because I try and say they're Mickey. That's the weakness of mine. That is the weakness of mine.
All right.
I'll take the Mickey out of I should try and stop him, because he can get me in trouble. When I take the Mickey out, they go. No, but you can upset people,
But anyway, I'm just going to go talk to the Catholic guy because it's the question I've got to ask.
So you want the state?
I wanted to ask you last week.
You were not there, sorry. You were not there.
He's a man. He had a wife.
Yeah.
The one is victims. They said they're not supposed to marry.
What we see
If they're basing their whole paradigm on Peter, which is
no, it's not based on Peter. You see, you have to remember, Catholics aren't supposed to scripture, right? That's a term that means they only go by what the Bible says. So I think this celibate priest thing, I think it actually comes from somewhere else. So, because they use Paul's statement for that, not Peter.
But really they should be, because upon this rock I'll build my church.
Yeah.
That is solid. Yeah? And that's who they're...
Yeah, but not all of it, because you want stuff like there's Mary.
believe in the faith to actually get hold of what the Bible promises, to really meditate on it, to do what we can to not be diverted by the distractions of the world. And as I said, I'm not standing above anybody because I got my television from Paul, or got my iPad, got all my distractions.
Just because.
But nonetheless, it's kind of pushing as many of them out of the way as possible.
Hello, mate.
And then developing the faith. Hello there. And so I'll end my talk there. In fact, two gentlemen have come here. I don't know whether they want to ask a question.
Yeah. All right, I'm a born-again Christian. Yeah. So, what's your understanding of the Catholics, where they got the celibacy from? Is it from Paul or Peter, or in general, if you can explain from the Catholics' point of view, the celibate black priests not marrying, etc., etc. Could you expand a bit more on that for me?
Yeah.
Sure.
First thing is, celibacy is always going to be the ideal for a true Christian. The ideal, not the necessity. I say the ideal because what we are to do is to follow Jesus as much as possible. And that means forsaking all things, certainly including a wife and kids, and all the pleasures of the flesh and the hearth and home, to advance the gospel. So that's the absolute ideal. But St. Paul confirms this. I think it's 1 Corinthians 11. I was going there, and I'll just find it. But St. Paul does say that I wish you were like me. Because he's talking about, yes, it's good to marry rather than burn. You know, I mean, although I said the ideal is Jesus' way,
better to marry.
However, if you're going to be ending up going loopy, you know, lusting all over the place, then don't be celibate, get married. Of course, yeah. But the ideal is, as St. Paul said, and I think St. Paul regarded celibacy that he was following as an ideal because he was looking at Jesus. Of course he was looking at Jesus, yeah. So there always would be, amongst the Christian faithful, a group of people, a number of people who would say, right, I'm renouncing marriage, I'm going to be celibate. Then the question is the priesthood, which is a kind of an additional linked issue here. The priesthood didn't require celibacy at first. We'd say though that all the various apostles were married. Peter was married.
Exactly what was. What can I just say? Yeah, that's what I refer to. Peter or Paul. Yeah.
Just before you got here, I was reading the passage where Jesus cures Peter's mother-in-law. So obviously he's married.
Exactly. That's what I was referring to. Yeah.
But our tradition would say, I think it's probably practically the case. These guys, once they come to follow Jesus and once Pentecost had happened, they were going off into various parts of the world. They weren't leading normal family lives after that. Their wives may have been with them, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. And I think that life was so tough that they were effectively going to be leading chaste lives. Anyway, one could be married anyway and be a bishop, because St. Paul says a bishop, a husband of one wife. The church has to decide then, should we leave it at that, or should we make rules that limit the freedom of a man to marry and be in a high ecclesiastical position. The Catholic Church decided, because it believes it has authority from God to decide these things, that celibacy was the right way to proceed for the priesthood and men and women in monastic life or the convent life as nuns. And that's because one can only devote oneself wholly to God as a celibate man or celibate woman. So that's how that arose. And that's our position.
Right. But Paul says, you know, you can do one or the other. It's better to marry than to burn.
Yes.
Paul said, yeah?
Yes.
So you can sort of like marry, or you could go through all the frustrations being celibate, you know.
But he wasn't frustrated, was he?
No, I'm not saying he was. I'm just saying what he said, yeah?
Yeah.
And, you know, as you know, in the Old Testament, it tells you about, you know, one man, one wife, to become, So, from the authority, it says we can marry, etc. Yeah? Is there any difficulty? We're not talking about eunuchs now, right? Eunuchs is completely different. Do you think so?
Well, yes. I think Jesus speaks about becoming a eunuch for the kingdom of God. He doesn't mean having your parts chopped off.
No,
but he means, though, abstaining from sexual activity. I mean, you ought to become a celibate man. That's what he wants. But he knows that, as St. Paul knows, that isn't for everybody. But surely, when Jesus says this and St. Paul says this, a Christian community that doesn't yield up a group of men and women who are eunuchs for the kingdom of God is a Christian community that isn't functioning very well. It's true, I think the majority of men and women will marry and have children. But there always must be a significant minority that will say, yes, I'll dedicate myself totally to God. Because a man who marries must dedicate himself hugely to his wife and his kids.
Can I just stop you there? So therefore, as you just said that, do you think that the Catholic Church should leave it up to the individual priests or nuns whether they should marry or whether they shouldn't, rather than saying it's better to abstain? And do you think that the Catholic Church, like the Pope, should give that option to them, rather than say it's better to stay away from it? As Paul said, it's better to stay away. Do you think the Catholic Church should say that, rather than have that as a, I don't know if it's a rule. I think that's why I'm, oh, so it is a rule. Right, so do you think they should take away that rule and give them the option to marry? That is my question.
All right. To me, all this depends on the historical circumstances. Like, there may come a time when we do something stupid with the Russians and there's massive devastation. Then you might say, look, we need priests and we think they should marry because a man and a woman can be like a social security system for each other. They can, like, you know, support each other. And in a kind of very, very difficult world situation, it might be appropriate to then not have the rule of celibacy for priests. In another circumstance, it might be appropriate. Here's what I think. Firstly, what we say is this: no Catholic is required to be celibate. If he wants to be a, if he wants to be a priest, if he wants to be a priest, then he must be celibate. If she wants to be a nun,
that's what I said to you. Should the Pope now say, listen, as a priest, right, we'll give you the option to marry or not to marry?
My view is, like, although every Catholic
change those rulings, basically. What
every Catholic can have a different view on this, because because you can just weigh up the world situation and say, oh well, I think now maybe it should.
Would he be denounced as a priest if he was to get married? Would he lose his place?
Yes, he'd automatic excommunication.
Really? I didn't know that.
Because the church makes rules and you abide by them, or you get out of the church and go to some other organisation and follow their rules. If you want to be a rebel, that's all right. You don't stay in an organisation where you won't follow that organisation's rules, whatever the organisation is. So there's a duty to follow the rule as it is. The question is the rule good or bad? And one can argue both ways, but because one can argue both ways, one has to take the view of the church which we believe Christ established, because it can only give the wise decision. No one else can give the wise decision on this. It made a decision a long, long time ago that celibacy was best for priests and nuns, and I think it's absolutely the right decision.
What do you think Jesus said?
Be a eunuch for the kingdom of God. And St. Paul, he wants people to be as he is, but understands if they can't. So the ideal is within man's reach, otherwise Jesus and Paul would
So
say
he's speaking from an individual point of view, Paul is.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
Wait,
He's saying when an apostle says, I wish all were like me, that's not just him whimsically saying, oh, I wish all were like me. He's really making a theological point about what the best way is to be. Now that means that there's always going to be a group of men and women who can do this and for whom it's best. That means those are the men and women.
That's different.
Yeah, but that group should become priests and nuns.
That's different.
And they have complete freedom from family to
that's
go out
completely different.
and risk their lives. Now, what happened with the Catholic Church? It expanded to be the largest religion on earth. And it did this partly by its men, without family bonds, going out to like the Iroquois Indians, getting themselves boiled in boiling water, and baptized in boiling water, hands chopped off and so on, and going into the most difficult parts of the world because they were men who could be sent. They were free of bonds. This was how the apostles effectively became. They went into the most difficult places and were mostly killed.
Okay, can I just say, right, all right, I'll finish it. Thank you for your, my brother's got a question for you.
That's all right, I know it's bound to be.
But thank you for that.
Yeah.
Because I'll share different views, but thank you for yours.
That's all right.
Right, so you know we're having that discussion before.
You know what? Months ago we spoke about the ascension of God, of Jesus into heaven, and you asked about whether it was bodily.
Yeah.
And did I have anything about that? And you reminded me of it, so I looked it up. The Fourth Lateran Council, 1215, states that Jesus bodily ascended into heaven. Okay? That's an ecumenical council of the Catholic Church. I just wanted to wrap that up, because you did ask me to give you something of the Church's teaching. I just said, oh, that's what happens, but I can't give you a specific teaching of the Church. I just wanted to encounter you again and to say that.
Right, so, but they're saying, when they're saying body, so they're saying essentially the one that he had when the apostles, disciples saw him.
Yes.
That's exactly the same one that's like on the right hand of the.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
No, it's
that's
spiritual body.
Yeah, but listen, this was hanging from last year.
Oh, was
I had to
really?
back it up.
He's glorified.
Yeah, he's got glorified body now.
Which glorified?
I believe that from day one.
Yeah, because after all, when he rose from the dead, he can now pass through walls and through locked doors. So it's the glorified body. Yeah. But the glorified body is in continuity.
And we will have that same body. Well, not the same as Christ, but
we will have similar characteristics in our bodies.
Yes, so there's no difference there. Yeah, I just wanted to clear up the understanding of that, what I was speaking to.
Yes, all right, so we had the discussion about the perpetual virginity of Mary.
All right.
And one of the things you said was that in order for that virginity to stand, she must have had a miraculous birth.
Yes.
Yeah, where Jesus must have somehow come out without causing any kind of, the ruptures that you normally have with like the placenta and any blood coming out, etc.
I'd like to be clear though, when we say perpetual virginity, what we're saying is, it's a mystery as to how that happened. We don't sort of say we know the mechanism.
Yeah.
But perpetual virginity is you could say though that by never having intimate relations with a man, that constitutes perpetual virginity. You could say that Jesus could have been born naturally, and she's still a virgin, because the virginity being lost could be said to be about having relations with a man, and that never happens. I'm saying that we have a tradition as well that Jesus is born in a miraculous way, and so there's no kind of there's no birth in the standard way.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying you don't have to kind of like we don't have to be fixed on that as a doctrine. Go on, sorry.
Something has been recorded within the fathers of the church that the virgin birth of our Lord Jesus was like similar, like by analogy, what he did to in his resurrection. He left the tomb without tempering of the
of the seal. So Jesus left the womb of Mary without tampering with the vagina. Is the word? Yeah.
I wasn't aware of what the father said on this.
Like,
It's interesting.
like the fathers of the church say that was in an analogous way.
Okay.
Like leaving the tomb with his resurrection, he was leaving the womb in the nativity, in the process of nativity, and the confirmation of that. Some sort of confirmation is in the Gospel of Luke, I think, where he by saying that after she gave birth, she herself put little baby Jesus on the spot there, and they show this spot in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem.
Yes, in Bethlehem.
And
in the
this
church.
belongs to Catholic Church, not the place of birth, but where she laid it on the ground, I think.
So I think you're saying that because in Luke 2 and 7.
So herself she did it. She had the strength, and the position of her was such.
Yeah, because he said in 7 that she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes. So I suppose what he's saying is because that's how she could have done it herself, rather than having them like a midwife do it, like how you normally.
Yeah, no midwife necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, because the reason why I brought this up in the same Luke, relating to what you said about the miraculous birth, because what we actually read here, it must be the case that the birth wasn't miraculous.
Okay.
Because if we read the same Luke 2, we go down to Luke 2 and 21, and it says, and when the 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child, his name was called Jesus, which was so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And when the days of purification, according to the law of Moses, were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male that openeth the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. So the fact that she had to do days of purification, anything to do with purification is because the blood came out. So that means having to do that would indicate that it was blood was there in the delivery.
I think it's trying to draw too much from the text.
Yeah.
It says every male that opens the womb shall be called holy. Well, he's there in the uterus, in the womb, for 9 months. He effectively opens it by growing in it, and so she's following a procedure which she'd have to follow. In that Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist, but he had no sin.
Yeah.
She's going to follow in the law of Moses, though she has no need to. It is just because they're faithful Israelites. So he follows Jesus is a faithful Israelite following the law of Moses, not just the baptism of John. But he need not have done that. There's nothing sinful in him.
But when you look at 22 though, it says, and when the days of her purification.
Yeah.
So he's saying her purification, but so purification is from something.
Yes, but it's only the ritual of purification. It's not that she was in. Any woman who has a child in ancient Israel is going to be impure from that act. But she was having a child in a unique way, and so what she's doing is, like her son was unique in his own way, but still followed the law. She's unique in her way, but still follows the law.
But she wouldn't be, because if no blood came out, then that means the purification would be unnecessary.
So why would Jesus be baptized by John when he wasn't sinning?
Oh, because of what he said to John, that to fulfill righteousness.
Yes, but the point of baptism was a sort of precursor of the baptism that we would get as Christians. But it was still a baptism to recognise sin. Jesus undergoes that baptism, which everybody else who underwent it was because they were sinners. So yes, he's saying do it anyway to fulfill all righteousness, but it isn't a baptism to fulfill righteousness. It is a baptism for sin.
Right, but I don't know if you remember I can't remember somewhere in John when it talks about I think it's just before John 4, Yeah, it might be John 3, where they came and talked to John the Baptist, and they were talking to him about, I think it was purification they called it.
Right.
So, but purification, that would be in relation to the priesthood.
You'll have to take me to the verse.
Nowadays,
all right, yes, it's John 3 and 25.
Yeah.
So it says, then there arose a question between some of John's disciples and the Jews about purifying. And they came unto John and said unto him, Rabbi, he that was with thee beyond Jordan, to whom thou bearest witness, behold, the same baptizeth all men. Come to him. John answered and said, a man can receive nothing except it be given him from heaven. So notice the questions about purifying, and then they're asking the question about baptism. So it seems as if because the way I see it anyway is that one of the reasons for baptism is because of the fact that the priest had to go into that big bowl with the cow horns, I think it was, in Leviticus, or is it I think it's in Leviticus. They had to make that big bowl in front of the temple.
Gosh, I can't recall. But anyway.
Yeah, and the priests are supposed to they have to dip in it, and that's a part of their purification process.
Okay. But you still have other issues that Jesus was circumcised.
Yeah.
Now, what on earth is Jesus being circumcised for? He's the Son of God.
Oh, no, but that's because of the covenant. So the covenant says that they have to be circumcised.
Okay, so he doesn't need to be circumcised, though, does he? The Jews do need to be circumcised, little babies, but he doesn't need to be, and yet it's done to him. Like things are done to Mary which don't need to be done.
Yeah, but the circumcision is a set process you do. But it's the fact that...
As is purification.
Yeah, but you just think that if she didn't need to be purified, with the way that Luke seems to be so good at, finding stuff out, if he'd have found out that no blood had come out, you'd have put in... Remember what he said about Joseph being Jesus' father, and you put it in brackets? So you'd expect him to be like how good he is to put in brackets, even though she didn't need purifying.
Well, listen, we can say... What you're saying here is quite ingenious. It's just that I think that there's sufficient parallel between how Jesus was subject to the law, yet there was absolutely no need for him to be subject to any bit of the law. Mary was subject to the law, and there was no need in these respects for her to be subject to the law. So they both followed a parallel obedience to the law, in my view. Your reference to Luke, interesting point. But I just don't feel that there's enough information in here to get your ball across the line.
Right, but when you're saying about Jesus is not subject to the law, where do you get that from?
Because he's the inventor of the law.
Yeah, but he came as a human. So
I know, but he's in his human nature.
Yeah.
Right, he's here, that's true. But the person Jesus in our religion is the Son, is God the Son.
Yeah.
God is not subject to his law. He might want to give the appearance of being so for the sake of those around him, but he actually isn't subject to the law. The points about baptism, no need, he's not a sinner. Circumcision, no need because he's the Son of God. But he goes through it because he's taken to himself a human nature.
Yeah.
But that's an appearance of him being a normal, ordinary human being.
Yeah, but the thing about it is that if he was in some way not human, that's the only way that he would not require circumcision. But if he's fully human, which you know he was because he died and the blood came out.
He's fully God. He's fully human, but he's fully God. This is the problem. He being fully God and his personhood being God, then strictly speaking, there's absolutely no need for him to go through any of the rituals.
Oh yeah, so his person and the God part of him, as you say, wouldn't, but the human part would, because he's fully human. So because he's being fully human, he would have to go through anything that Moses said had to be done to a full human. He would have to do it.
If he was a divine person and a human person, but the person is divine. The divine person possesses a human nature.
Yeah.
This means that the divine person because the law applies to persons, and so if this person is divine, though he possesses a human nature, he's not subject to the law in actual fact, because he doesn't need to build a relationship with God the Father. He already has it from time immemorial, I could say, as God. So there's no need to be circumcised. He is not, even in his human nature, he's sinless. So there's no need to be baptized.
Right. So.
And in fact, that the circumcision relates to sin as well as bringing you into the family of God.
Well, not really. It's you come out, and after 8 days you get circumcised. So that's just a standard thing that every Israelite human, it happens to them. So since his body was the same Israelite human body, that's what he said he wanted to be, then he'd have to follow the same thing that the other people with human bodies as well had to follow.
Yes. Okay, I think you and I have thrashed this one, and as I say, I don't think there's sufficient in the text to say that Mary would have had Jesus in the normal way another woman would. You've pointed out texts, which I understand, you pointed out, but I just don't think they get, as I said, don't get the ball over the net.
Right. So, okay, so.
And there's it's very ancient in tradition that she did not have the child in the normal way. So the question then is, are those traditions an invention? Are we actually today looking at this with clearer eyes than Christians did centuries ago? One could argue either way without knowing for certain. But Jesus established the church, which is the authoritative voice that he's left with us, and the church is saying he was not born in the normal way. She remained a perpetual virgin.
Right.
However one understands that, the perpetual virginity is a dogma of the church.
Right. So, because talking about it, because there's another question I wanted to ask from before this one, is talking about how you're saying about the dogmas being like final for any Catholic.
Yes.
So, those dogmas, is it the Pope who enforces them? Or, who's like the top final authority on them?
I suppose you could say he is the enforcer.
Right.
Capital E. That would be true. But actually, in practice, the bishop in each diocese around the world is the enforcer in his region.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I say enforcer, I don't mean like the one who actually carries out punishments, but I mean when to... because how, like with Moses, when he was... I don't know if you remember that time where they said they were in the wilderness and that man did pick up sticks on the Sabbath. So then they brought him to Moses, and so then obviously Moses is the top person who they were dealing with, and then he went straight to God. So he then brought this problem, because he wasn't 100% certain about it, straight to God, and then obviously whatever God said is 100% final. So now any kind of questions in the Catholic Church which people have, I presume they have to be brought to the Pope.
No. If you really have a question, I mean, it's a practical matter as well as anything else.
Yeah.
You have to ask your priest. Well, there are manuals, there are theological manuals you can consult.
Right.
But if one doesn't have access to them, or one doesn't understand them, for educational reasons or whatever, one just goes to one's local priest and asks the question that one has.
Yeah.
If the priest can't answer that can be asked of the bishop, who's likely to be much more educated and know much more.
Yeah.
I doubt that then, if a bishop can't answer the question, that it would go to the Pope unless there's some serious issue that needs to be addressed.
Yes.
Like Luther's, is a man saved by faith alone? Or the parish priest says, well, so the bishop ends up with the Pope.
Yeah.
But most questions aren't like that. They're just humdrum questions.
Oh yeah.
So they'll be just dealt with at the local level.
Yes.
But we will not be seeing the Pope sort of trying to get God's view on it.
Right. So
God has established the church to make these decisions. He did in the Acts of the Apostles, the Council of Jerusalem. James makes his decision after Peter has given a long speech.
Yeah.
James didn't say we'll consult the Holy Spirit first, after Peter had spoken, and then gives his decision. His position as the chief of the Jerusalem church means that he makes the decision there.
Right, but I don't know if you noticed that what James did, he did like what the Muslim scholars do. He actually brought a proof from the from the law and prophets.
Okay.
So if a situation like that happened to arise, would the Pope do a similar thing?
There might not be any precedent from the law and the prophets. All our bioethical questions are brand new. I mean, you could say, for example, a man can't dress as a woman because that's in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
But what do you say to the question? I mean, I know it's kind of obvious to us, but where's the rule against every abortion in every case in the Bible? I mean, we can draw attention to certain passages, but to say that the Bible rules out abortion in every case, I think is a bit tricky.
Oh no, but that's not too good a one because of Rachel and what's his name? I've forgotten Eli's son, his wife. So because of Rachel and that son's wife, because both of them died in childbirth.
Okay.
So in both those cases, the priority was the child.
Okay, but as I say, I just think that there are many bioethical questions. Abortion is obviously the most compelling one, has been for decades. But the Bible doesn't give an answer. So although you could, in some cases, you could go to the Bible and say this is the answer, but even then, if there's something in the Bible, that doesn't mean it's going to give you the answer. Because, for example, in the old days, somebody's practicing witchcraft, you stone them to death, right?
Yeah.
Should we do that now?
Well, we're not on if obviously that was for when they were in the land, because that's what the rules were given for.
Okay.
But now,
yeah,
because of the Israelites are in captivity, obviously those rules can't apply because the heathens run the place now.
Okay, but the Christians, what should they do with a witch in a Christian land?
No, but there is no Christian land.
Don't you think there ever has been?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay, what if there were one?
Yeah.
What if one just, one appeared in a few years' time, praise God, Christian country? What should they do with witches?
Well, I suppose they'd have to maybe do it like how what Jesus said about the church and just send her out the country.
Okay, exile her, but where's that in the Bible?
No, I'm just doing a parallel of because the church, when someone causes a problem in the church and is a disagreement,
yeah,
you're supposed to basically put them out as the final.
Out of the church though, not out of the country.
No, but the country's the church. So you put them out the border.
No, the church is in the country. It's maybe a Christian country, but
yeah,
the church is a supernatural reality in the country.
Yeah.
The nation, the state is a Christian state in this hypothetical scenario.
Yeah.
But the land itself, doesn't mean you expel them from the land. You just said to expel them from the land.
Yeah.
So you can expel somebody from the church and they can remain in the same house that you've always lived in.
But I'm doing an interpretation. So if someone comes...
Precisely.
Yeah.
You've thought, right, this is what I think we should do, looking at various scriptures and thinking about it. We can't always use the scripture to tell us what we do.
But we still use it as a guide, so it's what is the guide to the decision. So we don't make a decision totally independent of it.
No, but I think your decision could be the one that a Christian state would take, but it could take a different one, different decision.
Yeah, but then you ask them can they come up with something from the Bible?
Well, I'd say there's no ground for exiling somebody from the land in the Bible, because the land is different from the church. The church may be in the land, but if you expel somebody from the church, you're expelling them from a spiritual community. That's entirely different from expelling someone from a physical, geographical community.
Well, I don't know if you remember what Stephen said about the children of Israel being the church in the wilderness. And remember also God was saying things about when it came to the feast days, people would be cut off from among their brethren if they don't do the specific things.
Okay, and nobody was expelled from the land of Israel, were they?
No, but there are rules for certain things where they said that they should be Well, I mean,
lepers weren't sent out; they were sent to places within the land.
No, lepers aren't sinners, though. We're talking about people who break the actual rules that are in the law.
Okay, the sinful.
Yeah. So in that case, because it's God who's ruling, His ruling is that they should be out of the land.
Sorry, where is that? Where is that they should be out of the land?
Well, I suppose the unfortunate way is that the way that they got out of the land is that you like burn their cities or you kill them normally.
Okay. So I just think that this is the problem. We can't rely on God to give us an answer for everything. We have to make a decision. The Catholic Church, we say, is established by Christ to make decisions on all kinds of matters, like the one the gentleman brought about celibacy. A whole range of decisions, that's the Catholic Church's job. Or, if it's not the Catholic Church, one's got to find the church which Christ did establish, because that church makes the decisions.
Which one? Who established?
Well, I'm saying that Christ established the Catholic Church, therefore it has the right and the duty to make decisions pertaining to Christian matters. But if you don't believe it's the Catholic Church that was established by Christ, you've got to find the church which He did establish, because only that institution can make decisions pertaining to Christian matters.
Right. At which time was the Eastern Orthodoxy established? What year was it?
Well, Eastern Orthodoxy is a collection of different national churches.
Yeah.
Then there's Oriental Orthodoxy, which includes other churches like the Copts.
Yeah.
So they will say the churches today, they regard the Greek Orthodox Church as the prime church. Russian Orthodoxy claims a major authority, and there's tension between Greece.
They're too far away anyway, so the Greeks are nearer. So
nonetheless,
yeah.
If we take the Greeks, you see, when they split from us in 1054, when we excommunicated them.
Oh, so it's a recent thing.
They sought to excommunicate us, but we don't believe they can have authority to excommunicate us. How can a local bishop excommunicate the chief shepherd? It's absurd. But the Pope excommunicated them. That's the event that matters. 1054. That was part of the Catholic Church. Regions of the Catholic Church pushed out of the church.
Right.
They then, now what's the status of them? Well, they're excommunicated body, part of the body. Okay. They then start saying they are the church. Well, they're centered on Constantinople, Byzantium, and that church begins. Well, they say that they began with the Apostle Andrew, or a disciple of the Apostle Andrew.
Right.
But this is got no historical basis at all. Unlike Rome, a strong historical basis, because St. Peter was martyred there along with St. Paul. But with Byzantium, it was a backwater. It was nothing. When Constantine chose it to be the new Rome, he was making a brilliant strategic decision. But it was just a little village. There was no reason for St. Andrew to be anywhere near there, or any of his own followers being near there. It was just made up because they wanted to have authority like Rome had. That means that Greek Orthodoxy, as a standalone church, cannot stand alone, because it's separated from the vine, which is the body of Christ, the Catholic Church. Then, what is hilarious, the Greeks then go to Russia. The Russians say, when they choose Christianity over Islam, and they've decided they want Orthodoxy, not Rome, political reasons, I think, they say, look, come and give us a patriarchate, because they want to be don't want to just be under the Greeks, because the Greeks are run by the Muslims now, because Byzantium was conquered by Islam.
Oh yeah.
In 1453.
Yeah.
After that, in the 1600s, the Greeks go to Moscow, somewhere like Moscow, and they create a patriarchate.
Okay.
In Russia. This is stupid. They have no authority so to do. It'd be as if the Bishop of Birmingham could go to I don't know, the Congo and create a patriarchate there. He has no authority to do that. He's just a local bishop. And so the bishops of Byzantium had no authority to create patriarchates. So all these patriarchates that have come into existence, they're invalid, illicit. Now, go further. The Copts, their church in Egypt was founded by St. Mark. not an apostle, but an apostolic man.
Right.
Therefore, they have validity in themselves. Because we believe they really were started by St. Mark.
Right.
As I say, I'm totally sceptical for the historical basis for Byzantium, but not for Egypt. Good reason to believe Mark was there. But if a church separates itself from Rome, it's separating itself, in our view, from what is said in this book, that one must adhere to Peter. Peter is the leader, and the office that's created by Christ is an office of leadership. Separate yourself from that, you're separating yourself from Christ's will. Otherwise, everybody could go their own way. My church was founded by an apostle, so I'm autonomous. Oh, my church was founded by an apostle, so I'm autonomous. Jesus established one church, one head, one person has the keys, and that's being a prime minister, Isaiah 22:22. That one is Peter, and that because it's the keys that are given to him, that means he's an office holder. It's not that they die with him, because they're keys of an office.
Yeah.
So when he dies, the office continues, and it's filled by somebody else. As it happens, it's Linus, then Cletus, then I think Sixtus. And on it goes.
So these names, what documentation are they kept in?
Saint Irenaeus in about the year 180 gave us a list all the way back to Peter.
Right.
I think Socrates Scholasticus later did the same thing. There's another list, I've forgotten the name. Actually, it's not too distant from Irenaeus. But there we have, and we have nobody disputing these claims of the antiquity of the lineage of the bishops of Rome.
But I suppose the problem is that in those times, that was when the Christians were getting persecuted, so they'd have a hard time disputing anything.
No, it wasn't every day. I mean, there were times when it was peaceful, huge times before the empire converted to Catholicism, when there was peace, and because the church was building up all the time. You know, you see the trend. I mean, it's a massive growth, and the persecution, of course, wasn't happening everywhere at all times. Irenaeus was in Lyon, southern France. He was from Syria, I think. He ended up in France. So there's but we know from the writings of these early centuries there was plenty of opportunity to think about the church, think about what it was, how it's growing, what its beliefs were in the past, and so on. There was no. It wasn't like, you know, hellfire and fury from the Roman emperors, so that nothing survived, nothing was written, everybody was running scared, hiding in the catacombs. It wasn't like that. That happened, but the church grew and wrote about itself. So we have plenty of records.
But don't you find this interesting though, that you know what you're saying about that the one who said he was in France?
Yeah.
That sounds almost a bit like the problem that the Muslims are having now.
Oh.
Where they say it all started in the Hijaz, in the middle of this, you know, where there's no water, like there's. Yeah. But yet, when you actually read the history, and even their history, they always talk about like Damascus and Jerusalem. So the fact that any of their like solid history started that were written was written by people who were like in Cairo, Ctesiphon, you know, Baghdad.
Yeah.
So it's all that area is where the actual people are doing all the writing.
Yeah. They're 3,000 miles away, 2,000 miles away, and 200 years plus away.
Yeah.
Okay?
So,
but our writings don't start with Irenaeus.
Right,
they go back before that. We have St. Clemens of Rome. Clemens, the fourth bishop, not Sixtus as I'm saying, Clemens. He writes a letter to the Corinthians. So he's writing from Rome to a bunch of guys in Greece, telling them to get their house in order. Now, what is a bishop in one country having the temerity to tell a bunch of guys running their church in another country? If this was Protestantism, they'd tell them to get lost. It's our church, we've got our Bible, you go and sling your hook. Clement, they'd say. This was a true Protestant faith in the 1st century AD. But Clement, no, he expects them to do as he's telling them to do. And they don't write back and say, sling your hook.
Oh, yeah, because he's writing from where the all the guys with the big swords come from, isn't it? So
no, this is the big guys with the big swords are using them to chop off the heads of the Christians. They're not being wielded in favour of the Christians. Yeah. Clement has no earthly authority. It is a purely spiritual authority he's exercising.
But what year was that?
about AD 90.
Yeah, so that was that was a good time for some chopping still being happening because Alexandra got sacked in 130 something, wasn't it? So between
you may be right, but what matters is Clement was writing without any authority of the Roman state behind him. Rome was a dangerous place to be. The vast majority of our early popes were all martyrs. But the point I'm getting at here is that we have this letter from Clement at a time when the apostles were not yet all dead, writing and telling a bunch of guys in another country what to do. You don't get that kind of thing being written by other countries to Rome. They accept Rome as authority. It's constant that Rome has authority over Christians far and wide. Now, there is times when other Christians balk at the claimed authority of Rome. This is true, because we're human, people are human. You telling us what to do, but Rome always had this sense that it had authority, like Pope St. Victor I, when he was going to excommunicate the entire Eastern Christianity, because they wouldn't have our date for Easter. I think they wanted to celebrate it on the Jewish Passover. Right. But there you go, this claim of authority is there. It's not as if the early popes equivocate. They just are sure they've derived authority from Peter, who got it from Christ because he was given the keys.
But that still sounds like a bit like the caliphate to me, because if the letters are coming from the same place that all the swords came from, then you can understand why the people would be submitting to those letters.
I'm a little bit unsure how your parallel works there. I mean, the swords are not Catholic swords. These are pagan Roman swords. The caliphate, as is wielding the sword on behalf of the Mohammedans.
Yeah, but remember, he's sending the letter in that direction from Rome down to Greece.
Yeah.
And then the same direction the swords are coming from Rome down to Greece, isn't it?
No. In fact, there was peace in the Roman Empire. Greece was at peace with Italy. There was no problem there. But this instruction by Clement to the Corinthian Christians is purely on the spiritual level. Nothing to do with the empire, except that the empire makes it easier to communicate.
By the way, there was an issue at that time, and Christians had to resolve it. And St. John Evangelist was still alive, but with the issue they went to Clement as the Pope, even as the Apostle was still alive. So they didn't go for the resolution of that issue to St. John, but to Clement as Pope. Clement was not the Apostle. St. John was the Apostle, but it was more important.
Closer to Corinthians than Rome is to the Corinthians.
These are very important points, because if we have the Apostle John alive, what on earth is a bishop who's not an apostle in Rome writing to tell people near St. John's neck of the woods what to do, unless that bishop in Rome feels he's got the authority from Christ himself as the bearer of the keys?
Well, or it could be that because that bishop knows that his guys are the ones that lock John up, so now they can change things around because he's silenced now on that big island out wherever it is.
Well, if one might think that John's out of the picture, he can't do anything, and I understand that, but it's unlikely to be known. But nonetheless, what really comes from all this is that we have people in Rome again and again who feel they've got an authority which no other Christian claims. As we talked about Eastern Orthodox, they never, despite them claiming all kinds of what I think are dodgy things, we don't have them claiming the authority the Pope claims.
Yeah.
No bishop anywhere on earth claims the authority the Pope claims. Now, either the popes are a bunch of lunatics, like Luther may be right, Calvin may be right. They're just like, what's it, that Dave Hunt book, A Woman Rides the Beast, and the beast is the Catholic Church and all this kind. It may be it's all true, but we are either a bunch of nutcases, or we have something that goes right back to the 1st century AD and Christ himself. And that certainty, that unwavering certainty, is from the devil or it's from God. I believe Protestants are right when they say, they're right to point to us and say, you people are from the devil. Because from their point of view, they've got to say that. You can't equivocate about this. We are either from God or from the devil in our organisation. Yeah, that's what he would be. If one disagrees with our religion, one should see it that way. There's no point being fluffy and ecumenical.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, you know, we were talking. You mentioned about John being alive.
Yes.
So then,
supposed to be.
Yeah. So then, how could that one? You said it was Clement was the one who sent the letter from Rome.
From Rome to the Corinthians.
So then, if John was alive, then that means Clement should have broken him out of the island, and John should have been there with him in Rome, isn't it?
Who do you think
As the head of the church.
He might have been some sickly, bespectacled guy like me. Can't break anybody out of anywhere.
Well, remember what you said. That letter was pretty serious.
Yeah, but you see, if John was in prison at the behest of the Roman Empire, you know, Clement was, I think, martyred in our tradition. Most of these guys were martyred. They ain't breaking anybody out of anywhere. Never mind an island long way away.
Right. Okay. So he could still write that strong letter, like you said, but then he was also martyred as well.
Well, yeah. These guys lived a short life. It was the condition of Christianity at the time. You know, even when the church was massively established and strong, Emperor Justinian from Byzantium sent, I think, Belisarius, his general, maybe it wasn't him, but somebody like him, to arrest the Pope. The Pope Vigilius was arrested, taken,
what year was
in prison. This was about the year, well, Justinian was emperor in the 500s, around 530, 540. Right. And so the Vigilius would have been arrested around that time and taken off, and he suffered so much he didn't live very long after he was released.
Yeah.
So you see, the emperors were not always our friends, and Roman authority is quite different from papal authority. Papal authority as such is there for a few centuries in the Middle Ages, really. Not the very early Middle Ages, because it's too chaotic, but in the higher Middle Ages. And then it wanes after that, so, you know, we don't have any significant spiritual authority.
All right, so
well, you don't need to, that's another thing. The focus is this man. All these guys are saying we have the right to tell you guys what to do wherever you are in the world. What on earth are they doing saying this? Are they sane?
Well, no, it must just be because they, the fact that they knew him means that he either would have visited... No, the Clement, because if Clement's going to send a letter to the people in Corinth, if they don't know him, some letter arrives, they who's this guy? They throw it in the bin, wouldn't they? So they must have either seen him or someone they know has actually visited him.
So why, in about the year 190 or thereabouts, did Pope St. Victor I threaten to excommunicate the entire Eastern Christian Church? When I say the Eastern Christian Church, I mean the part of the church in the East. Part of the Catholic Church in the East. Take care. I mean, we can't say he knew all those guys. I mean, they will have known him as Bishop of Rome.
Yeah,
he was writing as Bishop of Rome, as Clement was writing. Again, it's writing with what he perceives to be his authority.
Yeah, but then the people there, see, when it comes, because back in those days, obviously we don't have like instant communications. So usually when someone writes, you won't know them, you might not know them personally, but the only way you can have a link is there has to be someone else like who's travelled and known them, and then they would then be able to know who that person is, and they can tell you who the person is.
What would happen is, priests would often go with a letter from the Pope to the place that letter is to be delivered.
Yeah, but those people have to know that priest.
No, well, no, they'll simply come with maybe a seal. I don't know. Maybe there's a special seal.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't always be practical for what you've said to occur. But what matters is, whatever the means of getting the communication across from one place to the other, none of these men in Rome ever turned around and said, oh gosh, you know, so-and-so who was one of my predecessors, I think he went a bit far. We don't really have all this authority. We're just like brother bishops like the rest of you guys. Why didn't that happen? You see, the Catholic Church is like this. It knows itself, it knows its authority, it knows where it comes from. It's not a man-made church that came around 600, 500 years ago. It's not got false fairy stories about its origins, like the Greeks do, in my view. It actually knows itself thoroughly, and the only argument is how far does its authority stretch? Because when Pope Victor said he's going to excommunicate the East, they told him to get lost.
Yeah.
And you can get this kind of thing, and that's how we broke with the East in 1054. They were basically telling us to get lost.
Yeah.
Now they did come back. There was the Union Council of Lyon in 1274, the Second Council of Lyon, I think, and then the major one, the Council of Florence Ferrara in 14. I keep losing my dates here. I know that if Byzantium fell in 1453, it was before that. So that's the Reunion Council, and there the representatives of all what's called the Pentarchy, the 5 patriarchates: Jerusalem, Antioch, Rome, Byzantium, and Alexandria. And those are the conditions that were required for a council to be ecumenical according to those in the East. Those conditions were met. Every bishop signed a decree which made the Pope authoritative over all Christians and some other things that were issued. All except one.
All their Christians, not all Christians.
No. All those who were in the world, calling themselves Christian at that time, pretty much
under those bishops,
accepted these guys, East and West. And they signed this, and then they reneged on it. But the problem for them is their own theology, or their own ecclesiology says once you've accepted an ecumenical council, it's binding. Otherwise, they could reject the earlier ecumenical councils, which say Christ is God. They're being inconsistent. They are inconsistent in the East, the Orthodox, so-called Orthodox. But that's their problem, not ours. We in the Catholic Church know what we are, know where we're from, know who founded us. We're not made up by any man. Everybody who's come here and said to me, hey, you were made up by Constantine. It doesn't take long to send them running. Or any other emperor, or any other twit. Because they can't say that we didn't exist before that time. The only time they can say we didn't exist was before Christ was born.
Yeah, so we've always been discussing. So I suppose the one thing that we can get from this is that, you know what I said about with Moses being able to go to God?
Yeah.
But because obviously it seems as if the Pope doesn't have any way of not that any of us know of doing that. So doesn't that then mean that it's like we're all in the same boat, including the Muslims, in that it's really down to whoever's like actually running that organisation. That's who really makes the decision. Okay,
we're not in the position of the Muslims because this is a patently false religion. It's not just that. It's not just that I don't have its values, or I think it's appalling in its values. It's simply that you can show. He was talking about this. Mecca is a fantasy.
Oh yeah, but that's not what I meant. What I meant is not in terms of the proving what the history of what they believe.
Okay.
It's when something comes up, like what happened with Moses.
Yeah.
None of the beliefs have the option that Moses had to actually go to God.
Okay.
And get the actual answer.
Okay. Now, no man in this age has the capacity to go to God and get an answer to a question. And if anybody says they do, and this comes up amongst Protestant so-called prophets, they believe. I believe there are prophets, but I don't believe it in the way the Protestant folks believe it, because some people set themselves up as prophets, and they prophesy. They're prophesying that Trump was going to be president again. Now, I do believe dodgy things went on in the election, but he isn't sitting in the White House. So they never prophesied about that. No, he was going to win on a 50-50 coin toss. They got it wrong. There's a guy called Sid Roth. You know Sid Roth? He has programs on the telly. Apparently he's deleted loads of the videos where he had interviews with people who were the prophets, who were saying Trump's going to be president again. Anyhow, so many people who will call themselves prophets, of course, it's a recipe for dodgy types. Nobody, you see, can be sure that God will speak to him. Jesus decided to set up an institution with leaders. They wouldn't be. St. Paul wasn't going to God for a prophecy. He had the Holy Spirit inspiring him, and the apostles did. But when they died, the church moved to another phase. The Spirit could inspire men, did inspire men at times, but doctrine was the Spirit was to work through the church in its councils and in its bishops, especially the Pope.
All right. So do you still believe you know what Peter said on the day of Pentecost? You know, in his sermon about the prophecy from Joel, where it said the sons and the daughters would prophesy.
Yeah.
So do you believe that, as Catholics, do you believe that's it's still going on?
Yeah. Like I said, I believe there are prophets, but not in the way the Protestants go on about them.
Well, I don't mean prophets, I mean what Peter said, that's what I'm...
Yeah, there are prophets, because I believe there are prophets. I think that's quite proper. But who they are, and whether they're genuine or not, any particular one who says he's a prophet, really you have to listen to what he says, then wait and see whether what he says comes about.
Yeah, well, actually, I was going to say...
You can't know, though, whether he is.
No, the easiest way to know if there ever was a true prophet, a real one, is go back on YouTube and see if someone said in, what year was it? 2019, that there would be a virus coming, that pandemic around the world, and Russia would invade Ukraine.
Yeah, none of them said it.
So anyone who said that from 2019, then that's the true prophet.
Yeah. Alex Jones said in about August last year, he said they'd invade in February 2022. So Jones was spot on, but he perhaps had some information. Who knows? I mean,
but they'd already invaded Crimea and no one said anything.
Yeah.
So it's, if you really knew if you really looked at what's happening there, anyone would have said, of course, they want to take over the rest of Ukraine. It's only a matter of time. It's not exactly sort of psychic, is it?
But I think that what the gentleman's saying effectively is, we will not find anything on YouTube where somebody was predicting this, and it just shows how.
If you study like the history of Ukraine and Russia, then you will be able to guess what's going to happen in the future. So studying history basically makes you the best guesser of what's going to happen in the future. That's what Thomas Hobbes said.
Yeah, but the classic one still is the pandemic, because a whole heap of the those prophets, like you were saying.
And Kenneth Copeland stood there in 2020 and he said, COVID, you're finished. You're finished. And that was, middle of 2020. Well, of course, that's false. So that shows he's a false prophet. But you see, there's a tendency to just go too far, to feel you want certain gifts, so you decide in your mind you've got them, and then you make stupid statements. That's the problem, I think, with because the ego gets involved.
But I think I think I might mention before that I think the reason why they get so confident is because of the amount of people that listen to them.
Yeah.
And I've noticed a lot of people are like that. Is once they get a lot of, since they've got a lot of ears, it just makes them more and more confident.
Yes.
And I'm actually wondering if could that have been the basis for why the Catholics came up with a lot of these, the things which are in the Bible? It's because so many people agreed with it. They felt that the Spirit must be with us because all these people are, listening to what we're saying, like about, things about Mary, etc., and like purgatory and things like that. And so because the people were like behind it, it could be that they saw that the people accepting it in such large numbers gave them the confidence to believe that, it must be from God because of that.
I think that what happened is, things the Catholic Church said were regarded by the Christian people as perfectly proper and right. They weren't a surprise. They were the natural beliefs of the populace from the earliest times. So to say that Mary ascended bodily into heaven, that would have been a constant belief. May not have been recorded from the very beginning, but when the Church starts saying this, well, it's there in the Transitors. From the 5th century or 6th century AD, it's there in other early documents. They're right in the earliest time, but we don't know what people were saying in the earliest time. But the fact that people were producing stuff like the Transitors says that the people really were their minds were in conformity with the idea that the Blessed Virgin bodily ascended to heaven. It's when you get beliefs which are totally out of kilter with what the general Christian populace has been thinking, like the doctrine of salvation by faith alone, that you get a great division in Christendom. People know this was a brand new idea, and so the whole Christendom splits, and we go to war with one another. That wasn't happening when the Catholic Church says Mary bodily ascended into heaven, or when it codifies the doctrine of purgatory, because people always believed in purgatory. Here's an example. In the second book of Maccabees, chapter 12, verse 46, Judas Maccabeus speaks about prayers for the dead.
Yeah.
You can't have prayers for the dead unless there's some separate place other than hell and other than heaven. So when we're talking about purgatory, and you look in early writers of the church, early church fathers, then you see there's this purgation that they're talking about. So again, there's no massive division in Christendom. Oh, look, the Pope's saying this, the Catholic bishops are saying that, we must go away from this because it's a brand new teaching that we've never heard before. That doesn't happen. That happens in the Reformation though, because the Protestants do bring in new teachings.
Well, of course, when you're saying that it's a new teaching, because this idea of the faith is faith alone. Is that the one? Is it Luther that came with that, or was it the other guys?
That's Luther.
Oh, it's
Luther. He starts his career before Calvin, and we know it's a brand new doctrine because Alistair McGrath, a Protestant academic, wrote a book called Justitia Dei, and he says in that book that this was a new teaching. It was not there before.
Right. I'd forgotten something, but I just remembered it now. You're saying about how they came with Ascension of Mary, and the people they didn't seem to have any opposition to it. But wasn't this in the time when the Catholics were doing a bit like what the Arabs like to do by only speaking in Latin, so the other people couldn't understand what they were saying?
No, because once people are celebrating a feast of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and their priests are talking about it, of course they're talking in, Anglo-Saxon, Old German, whatever the language is that is being used at the time in the new Catholic Europe. And they're going to say, if it's brand new, they're going to say, what? This is not true, this is false. Like a Protestant today would say, it's a brand new idea, you can't say that, because it's not been in accordance with their tradition. Whereas the early Christians had no problem with any of this.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if it's maybe the reason they didn't have the problem is because it was in Latin, and so they didn't.
Yes, originally the academics will write in Latin, but when they say, but if the day that an ordinary Christian who's just not literate, who's just working his field, milking his cow, doing whatever he does in the little town he works in, as soon as he hears this idea in his own language, he's going to say, this is false. I never heard this before. This goes against Christianity. But they never did. And this was not kept in Latin all the way up to 1950, where Pope Pius XII announced it. This was believed from way back, so the ordinary European would have picked up on this.
Yeah, but remember,
in fact, they did, because the feast was celebrated all over increasingly.
Yeah, but remember what happened with Henry VIII, when they said that he had that Bible translated, that when they started to read it in English in the churches, then that's when the people, the way they say it is that the people suddenly woke up.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. No, it wouldn't be. It couldn't be. Here's why. When the Bible was translated, this was done after Henry had rebelled against Rome, and so although we didn't have the Protestant religion, because Henry believed he died a Catholic and wanted to die a Catholic. But as we get the translation into English spread, then the priests who were in the pulpits at that time are Henrician priests.
Right.
They're not any more Catholic priests. They're given an interpretation which says the Pope doesn't have any authority in England. The Pope doesn't have authority to say we can't get divorced and remarried. That's not what Jesus... So this is what they're giving to people. You can read a Bible in English till the cows come home, but look at the Protestant religions. Several of them, they all have the Bible in their own mother tongue, and they all have different denominations, because they all interpret it differently, even though it's their mother tongue. And so a person who's reading it to you can give you a spin on it whatever he likes.
So why is the Roman interpretation any better than...
It is not unless the Catholic Church was established by Christ. If it was not established by Christ, it's just another interpretation.
Yeah, but it was 100 years after he was dead.
We would say, if you go back, we talk about Clemens of Rome, AD 90, so that's 60 years, less than 60 years after Christ died. We say that this church, we get Ignatius of Antioch at about 107 AD, who says, where Christ is, there's the Catholic Church. So the institution as a named institution already exists. And it's familiar to his readers, so it must have existed before he wrote. So we can see, at least by the mid to late 2nd century, the Catholic Church exists. So does it come into existence after Jesus has died a few decades later? We can't say. No, it didn't, because we don't have the documents from that. We only have the New Testament documents then.
But he wouldn't. Jesus wouldn't have said, "Go and form a new church based on Judaism, but make it like European."
No. What he says, upon this rock, when he's talking to Peter, I will build my church. And then St. Paul in 1 Timothy 3:15 speaks of the church, which is the pillar and foundation of truth. So the church exists. At Ignatius of Antioch in 107, so if Paul writes that in about AD 55,
right.
Ignatius of Antioch in AD 107, say, speaks of the Catholic Church, we've got, say, a 50-year gap between those two statements. Only if the church Paul talks about has been subverted or got rid of and replaced by this thing called the Catholic Church that Ignatius is speaking of, can it be said that my church is not the true church that's established by Christ and the apostles ruled. As there's no evidence, no documentary evidence, no dispute about the Catholic Church being the true church, then we can take the Ignatius letter, which refers to the Catholic Church, as referring to the same church which Paul refers to as the church, and as Christ refers to as the church that he will build. Thus, there's every reason to believe that this church, called the Catholic Church, was founded by Christ.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
all right. See you again.
Yeah. All
okay,
right.
now.
Oh, I don't know if you saw my replies on some of your.
Yeah. Well, I saw one. You said, "Have I looked at my interlinear?"
Yeah.
Yes, and I think I said, if I didn't say, was it Matthew 7:14? It was about 7:19. It was about the food laws.
Oh, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark.
And I was saying you were right. I think maybe the last time we spoke, you were right. I'd misread in my interlinear.
Right.
And you were correct. So I think that was resolved. Right. If not, I'll look at it again because I always, it may be another year before I finally get the thing like this one before.
Yeah.
But we will get there.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Let's do it again.
Yes. And where was he crucified? He wasn't crucified. He wasn't crucified.
This is an invention of
Jesus Christ, then that process starts to prove mystery.
No mud. Yeah, it's what mud. What mud? Yeah, mud. No, it's the Son of God. The grandson of God.
So it's not the content of Christian doctrine. It's the prayer that is. It's like if I stand up and say, "Praise God for everything." It's that kind of
break things down.
I will allow it. didn't tell them to go and check. He didn't tell them to go and check.
I will take your wife before your eyes and give them to your son. He says, I will allow. You see, this was the Christian. That's the concept. They are so embarrassed. They're so embarrassed. You say this is the word of God. Wallahi, if you believe in that, then good luck to you. We don't believe in the word of God. Again, what you want?
You're no good. You're no good.
That's very nice, isn't it?
How many books in your Bible?
A lot of sense. And as much as sent us soul. You understand? That's where I'm coming from. Your soul is your soul is and you are saying God doesn't get it. Whereas God is don't worry. In the book of Leviticus, whereby the Jewish people, you know, in Jerusalem there's a temple there. Now the temple is broken. This is what is being done there.
Jesus said, by myself I can do nothing. In the Gospel according to John chapter 5 verse 30. So if Jesus said, by myself I can do nothing, how can he be God? Either you believe in your Bible or you don't. Now they carry it, they don't believe what's inside. Now, come on, are you lost for words?
والله عالم. حاط كرسية شكله والله.
Life on the face is in the blood.
How come you got the wrong Bible? Big liar. Big liar. Yeah, big liar. Okay, excuse me. What is
the whole baby is down and you is after the skeleton is
your clothes is dirty, is soap and water. That's what
the whole life of the people from beginning to end. There is no stage where you will see a skeleton baby.
That's the revelation that the Moses said. That's the word God. And if you go to their temple, they treasure their Torah, their Bible more than what is treasured. And this is it. Now,
you've been judging me.
when Abraham was
standing in all the jumped on a stage. The word in itself, God, if you want to say Allah,
that's still in there.
nothing for 90% people who are
but I cannot explain that.
Whether you may be a part of it or not, I don't know.
What do they call it?
Continue to try and find truth.
Why this place you put crazy? Why?
There's no way don't actually know. I don't even know what this is. That's all I know. Here I would say some people going to inherit but you can't say if we inherit it in you like as a culture, how you when you've never been in a part.
That makes Jesus God. How can God die? That's your logic. According to your logic, in Christianity, Jesus cannot be God because he died. But in Islam, Jesus did not die. Allah took Jesus to himself. Wherever Allah is now, the Egyptians have been talking about Jesus God in Islam. According to your logic, don't you agree? I got anyway, don't you? Did Jesus die in your religion? Did Jesus die in your religion? That means Jesus is God in your religion.
So I can enjoy it. No, let's think about the land. That's why they said
Jesus Christ. When people get confused, we say Jesus Christ.
Yo, content over everything for life. Originally, many years. Salute you. I'm not here. You're good?
Yeah.
Touch you nicely, full up. Yeah, man. If you need more, may have enough more. Yeah? Yo, you got, next week when you see me, say, yeah, man. Whole heap of things here.
Actually, it's something interesting. Have you, because I managed to find this video that someone did. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Art of Imposture.
Yeah.
You see
Yeah. You know who they are, right?
Yeah. Did you watch all 3 hours?
More than 3 hours. There's more than 3 hours.
All right.
But you just get the first part.
Right.
You see, me have some book where you go read with you know so you get.
Yeah, alright.
Because me give you 19 books.
Yeah.
Then can't go around.
Right.
Each book costs 74 grand. Each book costs 74,000. Me give you 19 of them. Yeah. Me give you the export.
Praise the Lord. Hallelujah.
Praise the Lord. I'm not here.
I find nothing interesting as you can.
But your time has come.
Working on the Lord Jesus love.
Next date, okay, 300 years afterwards at 9. What and more. When you look 300 years, multiplied by 365, every 4 years, February becomes 59 days. Multiply that, total number. So now, this is the Arab.
No. Hey. I see.
Where is Muhammad now? Dead! Rotten! Eaten by who? What happens is that where is Jesus now? We know Jesus that is where Jesus is. If Allah is on the throne,
Islamic State
Now you know what? We know that we can't keep that God's law on our own. We need Jesus to help us day by day, right? Because even Jesus himself, he said, I can't do anything by myself. I rely upon the Father. So we know each day as we wake up, we spend time in prayer, we say, help me live a righteous life today. But what I want to encourage you guys is, we're living in a time where God's law is being despised, it's being despised. Even in the Christian
what you're doing is encouraging, which is only last week. And someone came down to and I believe that God is listening. It could be encouraging as Christians. It's really listening to that. Every time before I pray for I'm telling you, to me, directly. I pray my prayer and God should pray that God should for this word. I'm saying in season, out of season. In season. Meaning that don't think of what you're going to say. Instead of what you're saying. I'm giving you right? So therefore, these are things we're very constantly.
Where was he first?
An example of that when trouble comes now. Iron, right? So therefore, when you encourage me, I get sharpened up. When someone else so that's what I'm saying to you. Thank you for that encouragement. Yeah? That's what I'm going to say because I've been doing this to other people. Some people are weak. They're going through this. Exactly. So that's why I have to find out who you was first. I don't accept anything that comes to me. I must not say test.
Even the people that you kiss the feathers of Jews don't even want you.
So as you opened up, I had to ask you those questions.
You protect the Jews and they don't even want you.
So don't think offensive of what I was asking you, right? You know, the fruits.
You expelled them throughout the Christendom.
Therefore, I know that
you expelled them.
I can relate to that.
In the name of Christ.
Praise God, praise God. Now we all can go through it. Yes. Now we know we're all good now, yeah?
All the best.
God bless you. Amen, We're just talking about trying to explain the Spirit, yeah? And we're just giving one example. How would you explain it? I tried, but perhaps you have a different way of the Spirit. We're not the physical, because God is Spirit, and they're the worship. So how would you explain, not God, I'm not asking you to explain God, but Spirit. Yeah, Spirit itself, the term Spirit. How would you go about that? I know it's very deep. It's very difficult to you know what I'm saying? Don't forgive me. I'm not trying to trick you or anything, right?
It's just like,
please, I need to be helped as well. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like I said, I need sharpened eyes. That's what I'm asking you. How do you explain? Because the spirit world is more real than what the physical world is. Because it's taken from the spirit. Because God created us spirit first, and then He brings the spirit into Adam. Yeah, he became a living soul. Then, you know what I'm saying? So it's hard. A spirit, what? You can't feel, you can't touch, you can't see, you can't.
There's nothing that our sort of dimension can probably understand, because obviously we have finite minds. We're unable to understand fully or grasp the spiritual world. We're unable to grasp it in our minds. I think to understand it is to transcend where we are. Unless we become it, we won't be able to understand. We understand our laws in it. We understand the three-dimensional.
That's what we can only speak from human terms. Yeah.
So this is understand the spiritual as well. We have to experience it. I think it's something that you can explain to.
It is. You can ask him. Yes. No.
Like we can see the spiritual world, but we know that exists and everything. So it's a tough question.
It is. It's just like, for example, the Trinity, for example. Right, you know, I mean, many people, especially Muslims, they ask, "This was a free God." I go, no, it was only one God, but one God in three persons, right? You know, that's true, but it's still three gods. Each one of them a God, right? So therefore, they say, well, okay. Now, I said to them, as a Christian, I cannot understand fully the Trinity, right? And at the same time, that relates to I cannot understand God, because God is Trinity. If I was to understand God, exactly. Can you understand my logic? So therefore, I cannot understand the Trinity. If I was to understand the Trinity, I would understand God, and that will never be. You know what I'm saying? So that's why they're asking us to answer questions which we cannot answer. Only God Himself can reveal these questions, these answers, bit by bit. You see? But in the Bible, we know there's the Father, there's the Son, and the Spirit. We know all of them to make one God. Yeah? We also know that there is a verse. It even goes deeper. There is one verse which encapsulates all three of them together, which Muslims say No, there isn't a verse. Excuse me. Which verse do you think I'm thinking? One verse that encapsulates the Father, Son, and Spirit. Do you know which one it is? Both. Which?
I think Isaiah 48 really.
Sorry?
Isaiah 48 breaks it down a lot because it talks about the Holy Spirit, like to bring it out. It's actually a great message.
Yeah, amen. And I use 1 Timothy 1, verse 2. Yeah, which one? It's that was a beautiful one. Yeah.
Share these nuggets.
Yeah, because Muslims they always ask a question about that, you know, saying, well, we got explicit statements. They say, oh, you can't figure out where the three monies.
Yeah, but something you have to remember about the Quran is that because it's a lot of like rambling and just random stories. So you can't actually get anything from Europe from it. So it's hard to surprise them they have that hard time words and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they don't even go by what their Quran says, they go by what their scholars and the
Exactly. Everything is about their scholars.
And they obviously say things about which is untrue, like different gives them that boldness to go and challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me. The Muslims did have their own organization.
Yeah, I remember that.
They were in government, they were all over the place. Yes. No, but they were all
I swear that these Muslims over here, they're actually running from the
Yeah, this one's about the elect, yeah? It goes, elect according to the foreknowledge of God. The foreknowledge of God the Father through sanctification of the Spirit unto obedience and sprinkling of the blood of Jesus Christ. Grace unto you and peace be multiplied. Father, Son, and Spirit. One Trinity in one verse.
Do you understand that?
First Peter.
All these places I mentioned to you are not Arabs. Do you understand that?
Verse 2. Yeah.
But what I'm saying that the white man deny your existence. Where? Why are you here? Why are you here? I am here. That's why I'm asking him. I'm here because it's a multicultural. Show me the million of African people in the city of Basra in the year 1880. Show me. Well, 1 million black people are slaves in the city of Basra in the year 1880. Where are they?
Yeah, I don't know what they are, but they always say, that's not...
Answer the question. Where are they? They disappeared. Millions of Africans.
But this one, they cannot. Because Peter was a fisherman, right? He directly,
where are they disappeared?
This is his,
Million Africans. In one city alone. Basra, in Iraq. In 880. Where are they?
Where are the 45 million?
Where are the millions African slaves?
Catch you later.
Enslaved by Muslims. And as I'm saying, in the city of Basra alone, in Iraq, a million Africans slaves. Where by Muslims? Where are they?
It's from the wheel.
Muslims, answer the question. Where are they? They disappeared Africa. Are they from Muslim enslavers? Where are they? Muslims.
This man has only one thing to say, is Allah is pedophile. And this man needs to go to hospital, and if nobody takes responsibility, I'm just asking you right now,
why do you worship a bewitched man? Was Muhammad a bewitched man?
That's what I'm saying about
The Quran says chapter 15. Chapter 15 verse 6.
So
Muhammad was a madman. The Quran says so.
So that's why I gave
You
them
want to deal
the
with
natural,
that.
unseen things.
You want to deal with the madness.
But it's just saying the opposite.
Right?
Of
Because
course,
how
that's
can a
the
normal
spirit.
person
Yeah, that's the spirit.
worship
That's what God is. God
and
is.
follow
We cannot understand
the
him.
mad, the weak,
We cannot understand him.
pedophile, rapist,
That's what God says.
slave trader. Answer the question with your normal brain. Where does the sun say? That sun there, where does it say? Your honor that is not mad. Your honor is not mad. Muslims, where does
And also, the wind has water in it as well.
where does that sun say?
Is it?
According to the
So because we have water here, right? It evaporates. It's within the water.
You see there.
It's got water in it. Yeah. So it's got part of water.
He's on first.
This wind. That's the only two elements made of.
You must be a Muslim to believe this. No other person will believe this.
That's what the Bible says. By the truth you shall know them. A good tree will bear good fruit, and a bad tree will bear bad fruit.
You must be a Muslim person to believe this.
Sorry?
No other person will believe this. So, Muhammad, you say I'm a Muslim. The Quran says Muhammad is a Muslim. I am not your body behavior. Muhammad, who the Quran says is a man, the rich person. Quran chapter 15, verse 6. Muhammad was a madman. Quran chapter 17, verse 27. Says Muhammad was a bewitched man. The entire Quran chapter 1 verse 11.
Still don't understand why they cannot accept there's no one inside the cave. Why don't they accept? It's just there was a Gabriel inside the cave. Why can't they accept that?
Because that's exactly what he's saying. So the scholars, it was Gabriel, so that's who he was.
So, where does the sun set?
But when you show them their early biography, one of the early biographies is Bukhari, isn't it? I'm not saying he's the earliest, but there's some earlier than him, isn't it?
No, Ishaq is the one that gives the story.
Sorry, even Ishaq as well.
Yeah, well, that's what the main story is.
Yeah.
But then Bukhari's got a little part of it.
Yeah. And it says that there's no one there. When I say no one, it wasn't Gabriel. It doesn't say Gabriel's name.
But before you say that, there's something I want to say.
You look at
No, I will say this.
even Ishaq, even Bukhari, it doesn't say his name. If you look at Sahih Bukhari, book 1, hadith 3.
Came to him.
The Jews that Allah
There is no name.
But later on, hadith say that they put the word Gabriel in it. You see what I'm saying? After Warwick mentioned to Muhammad,
you have to be sure, once you are alive,
it will appear in all the hadith. You hear what I'm saying? But before Warwick said it, it's nowhere to be seen.
That's the way things some angels don't give their name, but Gabriel did to Mary.
Yeah, in Luke 1, Zechariah. Luke 1 did you show it?
Why in Luke and Mark do they have different genealogies of Christ? Which one is correct, in Luke or in Mark?
There is no genealogy in Mark. Yes, there is. Okay, I'll give you the Bible. He said Mark. Allah. He said Mark. Allah. So he has never read. I will give you the Bible and show me in Mark. He said in Mark. He said in Mark. Remember he said in Mark.
Why is the genealogy of Christ different in the Gospel?
Answer the question, please.
Now, the reason to answer that question is one taken from Joseph, and the other taken from Mary, the mother, from Mary itself, her line and Joseph's line, because the law had to be through, he had to be legalized through Joseph to make it legal on the Jewish sense, and Mary, that's in the line of Christ directly.
Yeah, I was going to say that in Bukhari, Gabriel actually brackets.
Sorry?
Gabriel was in brackets.
Where?
In Bukhari. So you say Gabriel, you say Bukhari. They just put it in brackets.
Yeah, like I said, they've added. If you look at Sahih Bukhari, read the number. Book 1, verse 3. Yeah, number 3. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It just said in brackets. And when they say in brackets, what does that mean?
Well, it's not in the Arabic.
It's not in the Arabic. Exactly.
Well,
you mingle with the Muslim to become a liar.
I mingle with everyone.
To become a liar. Show me the genealogy of Jesus in Mark.
Stop screaming like a man.
Show me the genealogy of Jesus in Mark. Show me.
I'm looking.
You are a liar.
I think it's cool.
You are a liar.
It's only in Luke and Matthew.
Yeah.
Show me the genealogy of Jesus in Mark. Show me the genealogy of Jesus in Mark. You are a liar. You never read the Bible. You never read it. You don't know what you're talking about. Look at you. You stand condemned. You stand condemned as a liar. Show me the genealogy of Jesus.
Why is the genealogy? Would you like your book?
Oh, but I show it to me.
Answer the question.
You claim.
Okay, you don't want it back.
Give me. Give it to me.
You want it back.
A liar. A liar.
Why is the genealogy of Christ?
Are you a liar or not? You are a liar.
You are a liar. Will you answer my question?
Where is the genealogy of Jesus? In Mark. You claim.
Where?
Are you not lying? You are a liar.
Will you let me speak? Or you just going to scream like a
I
madman?
don't speak to liars.
You don't speak to
I
liars.
don't speak to liars.
So have you
You are a liar. You are a liar. Where is the genealogy of Jesus in Mark? Where is the genealogy of Jesus in the book of Mark?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Are you going to answer my question?
The genealogy of Jesus in the book of Mark. As you claim.
But actually, think about it. Joshua.
A liar! A liar! Show me!
Better than this guy.
Show me! You're my friend!
Josh
That's nothing
has a better knowledge.
He's ashamed of yourself. You're a friend of liar. You are no shame.
You're screaming like a child. What's your point?
No shame. No shame.
No shame. Answer the question.
Guys,
Where is the genealogy?
Oh, he was there earlier on. He does my head in, man. I don't want to go near him, man. Because if I start debating or trying to, I just lose it, you know? I don't want that.
Yeah.
So show me a liar. A lying man, a grown-up liar. Show me the genealogy
like a broken tape recorder
in the book of Mark. A liar. I don't speak to liars.
Anyway, I'm plugged you like a broken tape recorder.
I am a Christian.
This happened again.
I don't lie. I can never lie. I cannot lie to make Jesus look good.
No amount of lies can make him good. That's why, my friend. There's no point trying.
You stand here condemned.
Condemned to what?
Telling people that there is a genealogy of Jesus in the book of Mark. Where? Show it to me. The liar. The liar. He's not ashamed.
How are you not out of breath?
Ashamed of
How are you not out of breath? You must
and you go
you practice all week in front of the mirror.
and lying to his teeth.
Do you practice all week in front of the mirror screaming?
I don't
How are you not out of breath?
Less people,
That's all you understand. Scream for 2 hours? Like a requirement?
I don't lie.
I mean, last
Join the Muslims. Allah teach Muslims.
I tell you, once Jay Smith comes back, we'll start bringing people. You know, he comes every so often.
Yeah.
Quran chapter 5.
I mean, since he's gone, it's kind of
company of liars.
It's not the same.
Join company of liars.
It's not the same.
To be liar.
Yeah, but one thing I've noticed is that the Muslims, they are, because I don't know if you ever watch any of the videos on the channel, if you notice that they're just trying to have safe conversations, and I noticed that that's, because like I did this, I talked with Lamin, was it last week? Yeah, it was last week.
Why is the genealogy of Christ different?
It's about the Bible.
No dignity, you scream like a nutjob for 5 hours. Tell everyone else about no dignity. Why is my friend, you need to buy a dictionary and see the definition of dignity.
They even say that, Paul wrote the New Testament.
Yeah.
They call him an antichrist.
So I had a discussion with him last week saying that
nothing in his brain.
and so when we had it, I think there was 3 cameras on
Have you ever read the book of Mark?
and when I checked afterwards, I don't think it went up on
Know about genealogy of Christ.
No, it wouldn't, because they know they've lost the argument.
But you see what happens, I had a conversation before about
Screaming madman. What is the genealogy of Christ?
and I didn't do as well then because I let him do most of the talking. And what I noticed is that
You know I'm Jewish, not Muslim. I don't know if you can see it.
One channel, so even though I didn't do so well, because of some of the things I said, one of them was like too scared to put the video on. Some of the things I say, I was saying them, but Lamin was really understanding what I was saying, but he knows that the people who are watching, they know what I'm saying, even though Lamin didn't.
What is the genealogy of Christ?
I actually stopped him from talking like how he used to before.
What is the genealogy of Christ?
Yeah, so because I worked more now how to quiet him down, so he wasn't getting to talk as much, and so I think that was the reason why I did that.
What is the genealogy of Christ?
Because if I can make it so he doesn't get to sound good,
Exactly what I'm saying, because they've lost the debate. Yeah? That they won't put it up. You know? But if they were the Christian camera, they would have to put it. They have to film it all the way through. Because if you put one with everything in it, and then suddenly a Muslim channel has gone half, people watch it and say, "Hey, how come this Muslim channel only got half of the stuff?" And then they'll start not watching.
Paul and Naz, they managed to find someone who they can tell isn't too knowledgeable.
He's Jew.
Oh right, yeah.
You see his hat?
Yeah. So the minute they find the victim, see how
the cameras.
Yeah, they all come around.
It's all for content.
Yeah.
It's all for their channel. I mean, I don't blame them because it's just everyone needs the. It's just like Christians, we need content for the viewers. You know what I'm saying? But I understand what they're doing. As soon as they find someone who they can beat, they'll put it on there and focus it. Put Chris. The headlines is Jew get destroyed. I'm just using, you know. Yeah, you know.
And so that's what I say. So the camera's
He's young.
Yeah. Just like that when I was watching Lamin. And as far as I know, I'm not saying anything incorrect about that.
Mas isso é
So this is the whole part of the video when Lamin was talking to the guy with the cowboy. But then I talked to him after the cowboy hat one, and that video is not there.
That's not there.
Yes, that's not. So let's try the next one. Let's see seagull one. I know their camera was definitely.
No, he's a Christian. Man. I know he said it his own mouth. So the guy
Victor. Victor.
Yeah, but I've heard him all the time. I've never. So sometimes I see him pray and he opens up and he chants. And I wasn't sure what he was doing, like, you know. So I didn't really want to label him, you know, as a Christian until eventually, and now he's come out and said he's a Christian. So I've got to understand.
No, it's a long time, man. Yeah, so he was Christian for a long time, man. Yeah. Right, so this is seagull. They don't even have they haven't even put up the conversation with the cowboy hat one. So even though SF Dawa recorded Lamin with the cowboy hat, SC Dawa didn't put anything up. So yeah, nothing. So this for the next one is Sam Dawa. So usually those three cameras, that's what they are. So SC Dawa, Sam Dawa. Right, Sam.
So I don't think it's the history, but there was some points. So they weren't bad as well. They weren't all bad. It's better, I believe, from my knowledge. Maybe I'm not going to always give good news girls to see. You can argue the jizya and know all that. So I leave that for the other guys.
Oh yeah, same thing. Yeah, you put out the one with the cowboy hat, and then I spoke to Lamin after that, not there. So all three of them did put the video.
Crooks and robbers.
So just what and I remember saying this to this agnostic guy that.
Destroyed him that quickly.
What was the question about?
How legitimate Islam is very similar.
I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
They'll love that.
It's good for the channel.
They'll love that. Why do they always want to attach themselves to have some significance? Why is it?
It makes up for the anti-Israels, the Muslims that come in and beat us up, that make beef with us, which I've experienced. It makes them look good against them. So they're saying, look, we're good with the Jews and it's not so bad for the Jews. And forget that, but the majority, we're good to them. That's what they're trying to show. That's what I'm sure they're very good, but they're trying to show that like we're good with the Jews. And the Muslims that come in that start cause problems with us are minority.
So they're trying to distance themselves from the ones who are. And
which is okay, I think.
But it's a shame. It's a shame you didn't get out Surah.
No.
It's a shame while the camera was there, you didn't get out Surah 533.
Jews, I know. I don't want to start doing them on the own religion.
Listen, this is what you should be doing. Getting up there.
I don't want to go on YouTube and be some Jewish boys smashed in debate versus Christian giant.
You know what I'm saying? No, you should read their own scripture. Says right. Was it?
Always justify it.
Or even 929. Surah 929.
Just behind the backs. Justify it, and I can never argue against someone that always has a way to justify something. So.
They are supposed to kill Jews and Christians, basically. Literally kill us. You know? We're not going to defend what they are going to do to
I'm a small Jewish kid, so I can't argue against 30 massive kids. You've got this guy.
Yeah, I know. They actually.
Sorry? So you can't debate with people like that.
Yeah, true.
What did I say that you can't debate with me?
This guy, I was debating a Muslim, this guy came in and goes, I'm going to stand in case this guy tries to deceive you. It sounds like a very typical stereotype of Jews being the one deceiving.
He already deceived you. You started from deceiving people.
I'm deceiving you.
Ask him what's the reason he deceived you.
He what?
He's saying I came there and he tried to deceive people. That's what he said. That you started with the word
You
deceiving.
said that I was trying to deceive the Muslim I was debating.
Okay, what's the reason? What's the reason I said you're deceiving people?
Tell me.
What caused? Yeah?
You tell me. Probably because I was.
But you're the one who mentioned it.
Probably because I was debating about Zionism. We don't know my views on Zionism.
You're the one who mentioned it.
You don't even know my views on Zionism.
But you don't mention it. But you was backing yourself though over there.
I was talking about Zionism.
Now you're different. Try to look humble to the brothers. Don't do that. You're even more deceiver. And now I'm saying it.
Okay, there you go.
Because of that. You see?
There you go. There you go. Zionism and Israel isn't the same thing. There it is the same thing. Zionism and Judaism.
No, they should read out their own scripture to them and say, listen, you guys are nothing. You know,
You guys are crazy.
Huh?
You guys are
loonies, I tell you. Right?
There's no freedom of speech in this life. I can't say stuff against people like that who are going to try to shout in my face and stab me a minute later.
They don't believe in freedom of speech. They don't. It's all one.
No Christians here, Rabbi. There's no Christians here, Rabbi. No Jews here, Rabbi.
Exactly. Well, that's what they want to do, take over the world, isn't it? That's what they want to take over.
I wish I could say my true opinions, but I literally can't do that. Only one or two guys I've said it to, but then I just got a bit afraid.
Well, so I think how many times have you been here?
First time.
Alright,
First
yeah.
time.
So that's what the problem is.
And they want to jump in and destroy it.
Once you get a name for yourself, they leave you alone.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. But other things, when you come here a few times, you actually get used to who you can talk to.
You realise who's no one, who's your job. Yeah. There's a lot of Christians.
Are you Christian or Jew or Muslim or what?
I don't think we're sure what he is.
What are you?
Yeah, it was a pleasure, guys. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, alright.
No, I'm saying, what's your belief? Yeah, alright, mate. Yeah, take over. Sorry?
That's private business. Signing people.
Okay, so definitely you're not a Muslim. Okay. That's what I want to know. Yeah.
They made me fucking, yeah.
No, because as you was listening to, we was talking about how he was being jumped on because he's a Muslim and that other guy. You know, so it's kind of no. So the main thing is, as you said, you're not Muslim. That's fine. That's fine.
The question is,
that's fine.
Press lost out.
Yeah. So you know.
Thanks to and you continue to influence it.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a shame that they didn't put up that video. You know, it's a shame.
No, but they wouldn't because I was going to say that.
Put up. I mean, it shows that it showed their integrity.
Yeah, but I was going to say that I was speaking. This is this agnostic guy comes who always likes to wear his mask, and I haven't seen him of late this year. But he was out last year sometimes, and I remember I was saying to him that whenever I try and talk to the Muslim now, if I'm talking with someone and the cameras come around, I actually, whether they delete the video or not, that determines how well you've done. So if you go and find the video's gone, that means
you've done well. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you know that you destroyed them, they won't put it up. They won't put it up. You know. I'm trying to define agnostic. Now, that's if I get it wrong, because I was looked into it a bit. It's the belief of not. They say that sort of like no one can prove that there is a God, no one can prove that there isn't a God, and so therefore they see life as that's agnostic.
The easiest way of describing agnostic is they can see how difficult it is to say there is no God.
That's what I'm saying.
So rather than trying to fight that like super hard battle, which is really difficult, and they know it's difficult, they instead like capitulate to that. But like Apostle Paul, they're rebellious against God. So being a rebel, you don't want to serve God, but you if you admit he's there, you got to serve him. So if you say this, 66 coming to you, hammering you, saying about this, what about that.
So they're running really.
Avoid all that hassle.
Honor the deity.
believe there's something, but you don't know what it is, and
But they don't believe there is something in one sense. Because when I say they don't believe there is something, I mean like they want the onus. They put the onus on others to prove that there is or there isn't. You know what I'm saying? They put the onus on other people, and they say to other people, "You cannot prove."
yeah, but what is he?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you see Charles over there, he's a classic one who's like that.
Which one's Charles?
The one with the hat, on the right, the black hat.
Oh, the black guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Is he an agnostic?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, okay.
And what it is so he definitely is the one who's trying to escape from God. Because I've talked to him for a long time, and you could tell that's so he's the one who got all atheists, because then you get stuck in the like the one place where atheists always come undone is to do with the beginning of life. So if you try to argue the beginning of life as an atheist, you're basically essentially like down a black hole, because you can't come with anything to say where it came from. You essentially got nothing. So that anything related to the origin of life, atheists have to run away from it because they got nothing to say. Whereas agnostic, because they don't say
anything.
Yeah, or that there is no God.
Yeah, you can't put a label on it.
Yeah, they don't have to worry about that part, because then they can say something could have created it.
Relates.
But the important thing about agnostics is that it's always not the God of anyone who believes in it. That's the important thing about it.
So again,
whatever they believe in, it's definitely not any God that any
a believer would believe that there is. Yeah, okay, right.
That's one thing that's 100% for it.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
What they see as God is not what we see as God.
No.
Although they want to prove that.
No, but any believer though, that's the thing.
Oh, any, yeah.
So they will be not the same as any believer. So essentially, you could say that they are they're like Kemet. Because with Kemet, you're the God. And
that's another one. I just can't get my head around.
Oh yeah, but here's a good thing is, if you ever could get one of those people who believe in Egyptology and actually nail them, you can actually get to find out how mad some of the stuff they believe in.
Is it?
Yeah.
I've never really looked into Kemet.
No,
they actually go into a lot about Egypt.
Yeah, but what you do is get back to the root of it. And I remember speaking to one of these guys in Croydon High Street, and I thought that, let me get down to the root of this and find out where this all actually came from. And when I was talking to the guy, the end result was that it was some guy from the 50s who wrote a book, and that's the origin of the chemists. So some guy from the 50s. So it doesn't have any history past it.
Yeah. It's just like Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah.
Same thing with them. Yeah. Hebrew Israelites, same thing with them.
Yeah.
I understand that the actual, the history, the real history of Egypt.
Yeah.
We understand where that comes from. But going into, and they relate to some of that as well.
Yeah.
You see? Like, as we know that a lot of the North Africans, they came from, Arabia, etc., some parts of Europe, whatever, they all just flocked over. Because the reason why the blacks came, because of a lot of drought around the area, the all desert area, not much people, the black people was, because don't forget, North Africa was flourishing at that time.
Yeah.
You know that, massive trees. That's why they've got so much oil in Libya. Yeah? Because all the trees, etc., is what causes oil. All the trees and all the whatever, and loads of areas there. It was flourishing. That's why they got animals in caves and all that. Look at the caves and all that. The drawings and whatever. So the animals were flourishing. And once, I don't know if there was a slight movement of the Earth's axis or whatever that caused the drought or the sort of like weather to change, so that it doesn't too much rain comes in that area, and then the people then move southwards, to escape the drought. So therefore, and then once that was left, not not saying absolutely banned, but that's when later the Arabs and all that moved over. And they thought it was just, oh, it's empty there, but not literally empty. In Egypt, they still had sort of some people over there. And they were black people. This is black, you know? That's why they got a mixed race. And they moved down to Sudan. Sudan was completely black. Sudanese people are the blackest people on this planet. You know that? No, I'm saying all of Sudan was. Because the north, yeah, I'll talk about regional, yeah. Because don't forget, you know, Sudan itself, before the Arabs came in, was just all black people. Same with Egypt itself, you know? But, you know, it's kind of like, I mean, a lot of that's history. I mean, there were two years ago about that, with the Egyptian history and whatever. But then again, I did sort of like listen to one of my documentary once, and it was kind of like, I didn't listen to all of it, but some of the Egyptians, people of today, they're saying, yeah, the black people were in this place. In Egypt. There were. Yeah. A lot of them were saying, yeah, black people were here first. A lot of them were saying that. Egyptian people.
Yeah, well, I mean, you see that in the paintings and the If you want to be notified when I release any videos, then just click on subscribe and then click on the bell and select all, and so then you'll receive all of the notifications for when I release any videos.
Was there any black people ruling at that time? There wasn't, was there? Like pharaohs and pharaohs and...
Yeah, but remember what it says in Exodus that the children of Israel were there to build the treasure cities.
Israelites will return to take down Islam.